Chapter 1864, Crazy Operation. The garrison rights to the secret stone fortress. What? With the rights to garrison the secret stone fortress, doesn't that mean our guild is now the fortress's manager? Upon hearing Shifeng's words, everyone immediately revealed surprised and excited expressions. The various large guilds were currently contesting crazily over the secret stone fortress. They were all looking for ways to become the fortress's manager, so that they could use it as a springboard to acquire the nearby resources, particularly those around the Copper Mountain Fortress. A fortress allowed players to gain control of an area much more easily than a town. This was because the fortresses in the Ur Empire allowed players to teleport to anywhere within their vicinity. In other words, a fortress's entire teleportation range was its defended territory, and guilds could send large numbers of reinforcements at any time. With this, enemy players would have difficulty mounting ambushes or encirclements. In addition, the secret stone fortress was partly managed by human NPCs, which made it the safest location in the entire Ur Empire. It was not a fortress that current players could threaten. Hence, becoming the manager of the secret stone fortress was equivalent to taking control of an impregnable fortress. Due to this reason, the various large guilds were doing everything they could to become the fortress's manager. Yet now, Shifeng suddenly informed them that he had already acquired the garrison rights to the secret stone fortress. How could this revelation not surprise them? I understand. I'll head back to White River City immediately and start gathering the required manpower. Aqua Rose's eyes glowed brightly when she heard Shifeng's words. At this moment she finally understood why Shifeng wanted to transfer an additional 150,000 guild members over to the Ur Empire. The acquisition of the secret stone fortress meant that Zero Wing's territory had grown to include all areas within the secret stone fortress's teleportation range. The current number of guild members they had in the Ur Empire was naturally insufficient to fully take advantage of all that territory. Moreover, with the increase of so many guild members in the Ur Empire, Zero Wing's strength in the Empire would also skyrocket. Hold on for a second. Wait till you're done listening to my plan, Shifeng said. He could not help but shake his head and laugh when he saw Aqua Rose's eagerness to occupy the secret stone fortress now. Having a large number of guild members garrison the secret stone fortress is only the first step. Our true goal is the Dark Witch's Tower, in the southeastern region of the Ur Empire. The Dark Witch's Tower was originally an abandoned tower. However, after the Dark Forces and the Ur Empire became allies, it became a temporary teleportation point for the Dark Forces. Due to the existence of this tower, Dark players have easy access to the Empire's southeastern region from the Ur capital city. Destroying this temporary teleportation point would not only hinder Dark players' operations in the Empire's southeastern region but also prevent them from cooperating with the Blackwater Guild in targeting us. Although everyone in the room agreed with Shifeng's sentiments, they still had to shake their heads in disapproval after giving the matter some thought. Guild leader, although the Dark Witch's Tower's defenses aren't comparable to a fortress's, it is still guarded by Dark NPCs. A large number of Dark players normally gather there as well. The various superpowers have also thought about destroying this gathering point before, but Beast Emperor simply isn't giving them any chances. He has dispatched a large number of evil beasts and evil demons to guard the place long-term. Even if we double the forces we currently have in the Ur Empire, the likelihood of us succeeding in destroying that gathering point is very low. That's right. Moreover, if we execute such a large-scale operation, there's no way that Blackwater won't find out about it. At that time, Blackwater will no doubt dispatch its own army to launch a pincer attack on us. At this point in time, the Dark Witch's Tower had become a target of hatred of normal players operating in the Ur Empire's southeastern region. Many wished they could burn it to the ground. Unfortunately, their hatred was useless. Not only did Dark NPCs guard the Dark Witch's Tower, but there was also the presence of Beast Emperor's minions. Current players couldn't do anything about the place. If not for these reasons, the various superpowers would have long since eliminated the tower from God's domain and curbed the activity of Dark players in the Ur Empire. Relax. I've already thought about this point. When the time comes, Aqua, you'll lead an army of 100,000 players and 200 miniature ballistas to assault Beast Emperor's ancient rock city. If we do that, Beast Emperor will definitely gather his minions to defend the fortress, drawing down his forces at the Dark Witch's Tower. Not to mention, those Dark players will no doubt come seeking to take advantage of the siege battle, which will further reduce the number of players defending the tower. When the time comes, I'll personally lead a 1,000-man team and thoroughly destroy the Dark Witch's Tower. Shifeng said. Destroy the Dark Witch's tower with just 1,000 players? Guild leader, isn't this too dangerous? After all is said and done, that place is a gathering point for the dark forces. No matter how deserted it becomes, there should still be around 2,000 or 3,000 players inside the town. Not to mention there are also several hundred dark NPCs there. Everyone in the room chimed in worriedly. A team of 1,000 is just right. Any more and our movements will be discovered very easily. Plus, even if our team of 1,000 is discovered, our enemies will just treat us as a team that's going out to grind or do a quest. They will never think that we are actually going to destroy the Dark Witch's tower, Shifeng said, shaking his head. For the operation this time, the key point will be whether the main army will be able to lure away the evil beasts and evil demons. The more monsters lured away, the higher my side's chances of success. Guild leader, leave it to me. I'll definitely make our movements known. I'll let Beast Emperor and Blackwater think that we're going for a final stand. At that time, they'll surely spare no effort in trying to deal us a heavy blow, Aqua Rose said. Only, are you really fine with just 1,000 players? 1,000 is more than enough, Shifeng replied, chuckling. If nobody has any problems, we'll start the operation right away. With this battle, Zero Wing will claim the entire southeastern section of the Ore Empire in one fell swoop. The 1,000-man team he planned on bringing with him to the Dark Witch's tower wasn't actually meant for battle. The team would be there only to serve as support and scouts. The main actors in this operation would be the 6 hell tanks he produced. Although 6 hell tanks were still far from enough to siege a city, destroying a small gathering point for dark players would not be a problem for them. Moreover, he also wished to take a good look at the power of the hell tanks. Understood. Everyone felt their blood boil with excitement at Shifeng's words. Although they weren't sure whether Shifeng was actually capable of destroying the Dark Witch's tower, they had been waiting a long time for such a large-scale war. The fights they fought before had been scuffles at best. They had also been suppressed by the Dark players and Blackwater's members all this time and had long since gotten fed up. Now that they had an opportunity to fight on a real battlefield, they more than welcomed it. Immediately, everyone took action according to Shifeng's arrangements. As for Melancholic Smile, she hurried back to Star Moon Kingdom and started gathering the guild's elite and normal members, readying them to head toward the secret stone fortress. For a time, the entire Zero Wing Guild was a beehive of activity. This situation befuddled the spies the various large guilds planted in Zero Wing. They all wondered what Zero Wing was trying to do this time. After getting a thorough understanding of the situation, they all involuntarily fell into a daze. What's going on? Zero Wing is actually planning on making a last stand against Beast Emperor and attack Ancient Rock City? Is Zero Wing insane? It has just obtained an airport, and it is already trying to pick a fight with Beast Emperor? News of this situation quickly spread into the ears of the various major powers of Star Moon Kingdom and sent the kingdom's players into an uproar. As for Shifeng, he had arrived at the secret stone fortress by himself. Currently, although the secret stone fortress had yet to be fully open to the public, players belonging to the various major powers had already gathered here. These players easily numbered more than 100,000. Including the independent players that had come here to rest, the fortress's total player population already exceeded 500,000. After taking a look at the general situation inside the fortress, Shifeng made his way to the fortress's administration building. Lord Claude, I have already collected the 60,000 gold according to our agreement. Once Shifeng met up with Claude, he handed over 60,000 gold to the NPC. Excellent. This is indeed 60,000 gold. With this, we'll finally have enough funds to reconstruct the secret stone fortress, Claude said, smiling as he looked at the bag of coins in his hand. He then took out a golden token and said, "Here is the secret stone fortress's token. From now onward, you are the secret stone fortress's advanced manager. I hope you can contribute more towards the fortress's development in the future." Chapter 1865, Garrisoning the Fortress. After Shifeng received the golden token, he could not help but breathe out a sigh of relief. During this period, due to the decrease in Silverwing Town's population, the town's income had declined considerably. Fortunately, thanks to the rare materials acquired from the Ice Crystal world and the continuous growth of Zero Wing City's popularity, he had just barely managed to earn the 60,000 gold required. Now that he had become the secret stone fortress's advanced manager, he could officially allow Zero Wing to garrison the fortress. although doing so would incite the jealousy of the various superpowers so long as the next step of his plan succeeded and Zero Wing displayed sufficient strength in the Orc Empire, these superpowers would think twice about attacking Zero Wing. Following which, Shifeng made his way to the administration building's office hall. Currently, over 1,000 players were seated inside the office hall, every one of whom was level 55 or above. They were also fully equipped in level 50 secret silver equipment, with some powerful ones even sporting several pieces of level 50 fine gold equipment. Aside from being high-leveled and well-equipped, these players also shared another similarity: they were all guild players. Currently, these guild players were grouped in parties as they waited for their turn to meet with the NPCs at the front desks. The queue is moving so slowly. Hopefully the leader will pick up a good quest. The previous quest we got was simply fraudulent. It actually required us to collect 500 orc weapons yet gave only 3 guild contribution points in return. There weren't even any additional rewards. You guys got it a lot better. Our quest was the real fraudulent one. We were actually required to steal 3 medium rapid-fire ballistas from an orc fortress. The designated orc fortress was chock-a-block with orcs at the chieftain rank and above. Even level 60+ Great Lord ranked orcs were present in large numbers. Our party got wiped out twice doing this quest. If not for our party's healer having the intermediate resurrection skill, which reduced the death penalty we suffered, every member in our party would have lost 2 levels already. The various guild parties in the hall were all grumbling about the contribution quests given out by the secret stone fortress. Not only was the difficulty of these quests extremely high, but the rewards given were not particularly good either. However, they also couldn't refuse to do the quests. Otherwise, their guilds wouldn't be able to gain the garrison rights to the secret stone fortress. Just as the various parties were conversing with each other, Shifeng, who was wearing a black cloak, arrived at the exchange counter a short distance away from the quest counters. His presence soon attracted the attention of the players inside the hall. Crap, who is that person? Is he actually using his contribution points to exchange for items? Impossible. Just activating the exchange counter function requires an individual to have 200 CPs and be an honorary warrior of the secret stone fortress. After my party did a high-ranking quest, each member only got between 5 to 10 CPs, and that quest took my party over 5 hours to complete. Even if that guy doesn't sleep and does quests one after another, there's no way he would have 200 CPs right now. He should be asking about the available items for exchange. Currently, the secret stone fortress had been open for only 4 days. Gaining access to the fortress's exchange function was simply impossible at the moment. Meanwhile, just as everyone was having such thoughts, the NPC Beauty, who wore an indifferent and aloof expression on her face, suddenly smiled and bowed respectfully after seeing Shifeng. "Lord Protector, how may I be of service to you today?" the NPC Beauty asked respectfully. "I wish to accomplish the guild garrisoning procedures," Shifeng replied, nodding. Upon hearing Shifeng's request, the NPC Beauty immediately took out a form and explained, "All right. Please fill up this form. Afterward, you will have to pay a 500 gold security deposit. Once that is done, your guild will be officially recognized by the secret stone fortress." "Here is 500 gold, Shifeng said, handing over the money before he started filling up the form before him. Meanwhile, the NPC Beauty's actions immediately had the guild players inside the hall gaping in shock. Who is he? Why is the NPC being so respectful toward him? That guy is carrying out the guild garrisoning procedures. How is that possible? Didn't they say that the exchange function is only available after an individual has accumulated 200 CPs? How can he complete the guild garrisoning procedures already? For a time, the members of the various large guilds failed to react to what was going on. When Shifeng was done filling up the form and the NPC Beauty confirmed that Zero Wing had become a guild recognized by the secret stone fortress, the sound of a system announcement suddenly entered everyone's ears. Orc Empire Region System Announcement. Congratulations to Zero Wing for becoming the first guild to garrison the secret stone fortress. Rewarding 500 secret stone fortress guild contribution points and the rights to rent a large residence in the secret stone fortress. The system announcement repeated 3 times. Only after the system's voice faded away did the various guild players inside the office hall snap out of their daze. Zero Wing. Damn it. How did Zero Wing acquire the garrison rights so quickly? There must be a secret to this. We need to report to our superiors immediately. At this moment, The eyes of the various guild players present had already turned bloodshot. The large guilds had long since made the secret stone fortress a priority. In order to secure the garrison rights to the fortress, their guilds had invested a ridiculous amount of manpower. However, even now their guilds still had little to show for their efforts. Nevertheless, Zero Wing acquired not only the garrison rights but even a large residence. This benefit would provide significant help to a guild in competing for the Orc Empire's resources. Very quickly, news of this matter entered the ears of the various superpowers' upper echelons. Isn't Zero Wing just an up-and-coming guild? Now, it has not only an airport but also the garrison rights to the secret stone fortress. Not bad. If our guild can obtain these things, we'll be able to monopolize at least half of the Orc Empire's bountiful resources. Have someone contact Zero Wing and tell them that King's Return is willing to invest in Zero Wing and let it become a subordinate guild of King's Return. Good. Very good. Zero Wing's development speed is truly surprising. It's no wonder Blackwater is constantly trying to devour it and has gone as far as to send that woman over. Immediately have someone contact Zero Wing and tell it that the Crimson Emperor is willing to deal with Blackwater together with it and help it protect the resources it has. In return, however, Zero Wing has to become Crimson Emperor's subordinate guild. Upon receiving this piece of news, the various superpowers all started taking action. Previously, they could ignore the existence of Zero Wing, as the guild still couldn't threaten their interests. However, the Secret Stone Fortress was a strategic location that involved a significant portion of the resources available in the entire Orc Empire. This was not a realm that Zero Wing should be allowed to touch. Shortly after the system announcement, Aqua Rose, who was currently in Starmoon Kingdom arranging for the transfer of members to the Orc Empire, received invitations for a meeting from various superpowers, as many as 7 at this point, which made her scalp tingle. Just dealing with Blackwater, a large guild with a powerful background, was already enough to put Zero Wing in a precarious situation. If Zero Wing were to provoke all these superpowers now, the consequences would be unimaginable. Finding herself at a loss as to what to do, Aqua Rose immediately contacted Shifeng and asked, "Guild leader, more and more superpowers have sent representatives to meet with me. Do I accept their invitations?" Even if the representatives of the various superpowers did not state their intentions, she could already guess the purpose of these meetings. Back when Zero Wing was still operating solely in Starmoon Kingdom, it could afford to provoke these superpowers as it had the home ground advantage. At worst, the superpowers would only feel slighted by Zero Wing's rejection. They wouldn't take any real action against Zero Wing. After all, they had more important matters to deal with. They simply didn't have enough time and manpower to do something unprofitable. However, the situation was different now. The Orc Empire was the competition ground for the various superpowers. Meanwhile, the matter regarding the Secret Stone Fortress involved the future of the entire Orc Empire. Hence, these superpowers would not take Zero Wing's refusal lightly. If the various superpowers got serious, they were very likely to destroy Zero Wing. After all, if they could not acquire the Secret Stone Fortress, then they wouldn't allow others to acquire it either, much less leave Zero Wing to monopolize it. Chapter 1866, Stepping Stone. They sure moved fast, Shifeng said, chuckling when he saw the anguished expression on Aqua Rose's face. He had long since anticipated that the various superpowers would make such a move. Previously, Zero Wing had already incurred the envy of the various superpowers over Silverwing Town. However, as Silverwing Town couldn't affect the overall situation at the Orc Empire and Zero Wing's territory there was still relatively small, the various superpowers weren't that concerned about Zero Wing. The Secret Stone Fortress, though, was different. Every location within the teleportation range of the Secret Stone Fortress could be considered the fortress's territory. Not to mention, the Secret Stone Fortress was the safest fortress for human players in the entire Orc Empire. The fortress was also relatively close to the Copper Mountain Fortress, presenting a stepping stone for the capture of the Copper Mountain Fortress. One fortress already provided an extensive territory. One could easily imagine what kind of temptations 2 fortresses held. In particular, seeing Blackwater occupy the Crimson Flame Fortress made the various superpowers even more anxious to obtain a fortress of their own. Now that Zero Wing had acquired the garrison rights to the Secret Stone Fortress, it would be strange for the various superpowers not to take action. "Guild leader, you still have the leisure to laugh?" Aqua Rose exclaimed, thunderstruck. "If we meet them now and refuse to cooperate with them, it would be tantamount to declaring ourselves their enemy. So, it's best not to meet them for now," Shifeng said. But if we don't meet with them, I'm afraid the end result would still be the same. Aqua Rose felt that Shifeng's proposal wasn't a good idea either. In fact, maintaining their silence would most likely annoy the various superpowers even more. That's why I said that we won't be meeting them for now, Shifeng pointed out, chuckling. How are things coming along on your side? I'm almost ready. I'll be able to have our members transfer over in half an hour or so, Aqua Rose said. Another half hour? After giving the matter some thought, Shifeng said, that's too long. For now, you should return to Silverwing Town and leave the transfer for Snow to handle. Once you're back, immediately gather an army and head for Ancient Rock City. So soon? Aqua Rose asked in surprise. With the superpowers already getting antsy, we naturally need to hasten our movements, Shifeng explained. Moreover, if we drag things on for too long, Blackwater and Beast Emperor might alter their plans to deal with us. If that happens, our assault might not go so smoothly. I understand. I'll gather the army right away, Aqua Rose said, nodding. She promptly dropped her current task and proceeded according to Shifeng's demands. As for Shifeng himself, he returned to White River City's candlelight trading firm. The Hell tanks were too large and transporting them would not be an easy task. Moreover, Shifeng didn't want too many people to know what he was up to. Hence, he decided to transfer the tanks one by one, all by himself. Fortunately, it would take Aqua Rose quite some time to gather an army of 100,000 players at such short notice. After Aqua Rose returned to Silverwing Town, the first thing she did was release a guild announcement stating that she was seeking to gather 100,000 members over at Silverwing Town to execute a siege against Ancient Rock City. Meanwhile, participating members had to be an elite member or above and at least level 50. Shortly after the announcement went public, it sent a commotion throughout Zero Wing. What's going on? Are we going to make a final stand against Beast Emperor? That's Ancient Rock City we're talking about. I recall there being over 1 million evil beasts inside the city. There are even Tier 4 NPCs and a large number of mythic evil demons and evil beasts. We won't even be enough to serve as appetizers if we try to attack all those monsters. Didn't you read the announcement properly? We won't be just 100,000 players. We're also bringing 200 miniature ballistas. Those are war weapons. Even those evil beasts and evil demons won't survive against them for very long. Moreover, since the guild has decided to attack Ancient Rock City, it definitely has other trump cards in store. Haha. This is wonderful. During the last major war, I was only a normal member of the guild. Now, I'm finally qualified to participate in a war. Zero Wing's members had an intense debate over this sudden decision to attack Ancient Rock City. This was especially true for the guild members that frequently operated within the Ur Empire. Thus far, they have been constantly suppressed by Beast Emperor's evil beasts and evil demons. Now that a good opportunity to vent their pent-up frustration was before them, they were naturally eager to jump at the chance. Meanwhile, word of Zero Wing's large-scale operation naturally entered the ears of the various major powers almost as soon as it was announced. Interesting. Zero Wing has just acquired the garrison rights to the secret stone fortress, and it is already planning to assault Beast Emperor's Ancient Rock City? How rich. Zero Wing is actually mobilizing 200 miniature ballistas in addition to an army of 100,000 elites. Is Zero Wing trying to use this as an opportunity to demonstrate its strength and solidify its position in the Ur Empire? Does Zero Wing want to prove itself to be qualified for the secret stone fortress's garrison rights? The various major powers easily discerned Zero Wing's motives for besieging Ancient Rock City this time, especially the superpowers who were trying to recruit Zero Wing. Guild leader, Zero Wing is showing our king's return no respect. Should we take action immediately? Hellfiend asked, a sneer on his face as he looked at the white-clad, middle-aged man on the screen before him. He never held any goodwill for Zero Wing. If not for his guild leader ordering him to come to negotiate personally with Zero Wing, he would have liked nothing better than to annihilate the upstart guild. Let's wait for a bit. I'm interested to see just how much strength Zero Wing has to actually think that it can defend the secret stone fortress, the middle-aged man replied, smiling as he took a look at the report he just received. Understood. At his guild leader's words, Hellfiend had no choice but to suppress the rage in his heart and wait quietly in White River City. I'll let you remain arrogant for now, Zero Wing. Once you lose to Beast Emperor Dash. Many superpowers desired the ancient rock city that Beast Emperor occupied. However, even until now, not a single superpower had managed to do anything to the city. Needless to say, the likelihood of Zero Wing successfully capturing ancient Rock City was even lower. Like King's return, the other superpowers also chose to wait and see in regard to Zero Wing's sudden movement this time. They intended to look at the outcome of this impending battle before deciding. A defeat in this battle would force Zero Wing to acknowledge its inadequacy. If that happened, negotiations would go much more smoothly afterward. Zero Wing really is overestimating itself. Nine Dragons Emperor, who was currently in the Black Dragon Empire, could not help but laugh when he received news about Zero Wing's intentions. Originally, I was planning on advising the Great Pavilion Master to hinder Phoenix Rain from providing aid to Zero Wing. Now it would seem that I won't need to waste the effort. However, I also have to admit that Black Flame is very smart. Had he asked Phoenix Rain to help him and the Great Pavilion Master actually agreed to it, I would have had an excuse to send people over to manage both the Secret Stone Fortress and Silverwing Town. Pavilion Master, what should we do now? Martial Dragon asked. The struggle for the position of Great Pavilion Master has already entered a crucial period. Absolutely nothing must go wrong. Bring a legion of experts over to Ancient Rock City right away. Once Zero Wing's members start escaping, cooperate with Beast Emperor to slaughter Zero Wing's members. It's fine even if you can't wipe them out completely. Just make sure to deal enough damage so that Zero Wing's development stagnates, to prevent Zero Wing from helping Phoenix Rain, Nine Dragons Emperor said. Once I'm done dealing with Phoenix Rain, it'll be Zero Wing's turn to die. In response, Martial Dragon nodded and took his leave. Meanwhile, inside the Evil God's Branch Temple in Ancient Rock City. Good. Very good. You want to use me as a stepping stone to raise your position in your empire? Beast Emperor flared up in rage after finding out about Zero Wing's actions. Since you are so eager to die, I'll fulfill your wish. Immediately notify all apostles and have them transfer their evil beasts and evil demons over. If Zero Wing's members dare come to Ancient Rock City, I'll make sure none of them leave this place alive. At this moment, even a fool could tell what Zero Wing's goal was. Just as Beast Emperor and his allies were making their move, Aqua Rose finally finished organizing an army of 100,000 players. Guild leader, just like you guessed, Beast Emperor has already recalled the evil beasts and evil demons to Ancient Rock City. By the looks of it, he plans on smiting us, Aqua Rose said, smiling. Good. Let's begin our operation. Shifeng commanded, nodding. Chapter 1867, Battle at Ancient Rock City. On Shifeng's command, Aqua Rose gathered the army of 100,000 elite and expert players in Silverwing Town, boldly advancing on Ancient Rock City. A total of 100,000 Zero Wing members atop majestic Thunder Wolves exited Silverwing Town. Some of these Thunder Wolves had even been promoted to bronze rank, and not only were they much larger than their ordinary counterparts, but faint arcs of blue electricity also danced along their bodies. In comparison, ordinary Thunder Wolves only gave off electricity from their paws. There were over 5,000 of these bronze-ranked Thunder Wolves, which were also players' companions in battle, wielding skills that could assist their masters. Seeing these Thunder Wolves greatly shocked the players in Silverwing Town. Amazing. Why do these mounts feel even stronger than ordinary players? Crap. My guild has only just built its stable and is preparing to nurture a guild mount, yet so many of Zero Wing's members have already nurtured their guild mounts to bronze rank? Although I have heard that Zero Wing's members are well equipped, isn't this a little much? Those are 100,000 players we are talking about, yet every single one is wearing at least 1 or 2 pieces of level 50 secret silver equipment. These players can rank among the top of my guild's elite members. Look at the experts wearing the core member emblem. Their weakest piece of equipment is level 50 secret silver rank. They even have several pieces of level 50 fine gold equipment. Although my guild has a lot of experts, those experts have only managed to collect 4 or 5 pieces of level 50 secret silver equipment so far. Zero Wing is cheating. The players in Silverwing Town in particular knew that Zero Wing could nearly rival first-rate guilds and had a very large number of experts. However, when they saw Zero Wing's organized and powerful army, they re-evaluated their opinions of the guild. No first-rate guild could hope to amass such an army. As they watched Zero Wing's players march by, many of the guild experts in the town even considered leaving their guilds to join Zero Wing. They had worked arduously in their respective guilds, raiding dungeons and questing every day, but they had only gotten their hands on a few pieces of level 50 secret silver equipment. In contrast, even Zero Wing's elite members possessed 1 or 2 pieces of level 50 secret silver equipment, with the more powerful elite members wearing 5 or 6 pieces. However, the most enviable part about Zero Wings members had to be the Thunder Wolf. Previously, when the various large guilds had yet to acquire a stable of their own, they hadn't understood how valuable the Thunder Wolf was. However, now that some large guilds had their own stable and had begun to nurture their own guild mounts, they finally understood. The majority of the large guilds that acquired a stable were fortunate if they acquired a 3-star mount. However, a 3-star mount had less than a 30% chance of becoming. As for a 4-star mount, encountering one was simply too difficult. Moreover, even if they managed to find one, they wouldn't be able to capture it. Meanwhile, as the Thunder Wolf was a 5-star mount, it had the potential of becoming a mysterious iron mount in the future. There was even a small chance that it could grow into a secret silver mount if nurtured properly. As Zero Wings' army depart for ancient Rock City, many players curiously followed. Not many players had witnessed a battle of tens of thousands of players, let alone a siege war of this scale. They would definitely regret missing out on this rare opportunity. Because of this, many players from neighboring kingdoms who had learned about the upcoming battle and were confident of their strength, decided to trail after Zero Wings' army. In the face of Zero Wings' army, the various ores and monsters on the path to ancient Rock City were little more than momentary distractions. Even when level 65 Grand Lords appeared, the fierce attacks of several dozen miniature ballistas easily shot them down. When the dark players who had intended to take advantage of the situation and assault Zero Wings members saw this, their mouths twitched. They then abandoned any thought of ambushing Zero Wings' army. Such power could easily annihilate an army of 10,000 players. Not even expert players would escape 200 miniature ballistas. After all, while a Tier 2 expert might be able to dodge one miniature ballista's attack, dodging 200 simultaneous AoEs would be utterly impossible. Even a Tier 3 expert would most likely fall in the face of such a large-scale attack. As Zero Wings' army arrived at the foot of ancient Rock City, the tension among the spectating players reached its peak. Some spectating players had even started to tremble. The scene before them was simply too spectacular. Zero Wings' 100,000 mounted players had stopped a short distance away from ancient Rock City, and the 200 miniature ballistas the army had brought were sparsely lined up in 2 neat rows, surrounding ancient Rock City's small hill. However, ancient Rock City wouldn't just lie down before this force, with its troops' disposition even stronger than Zero Wings. At a glance, one could easily spot over 300,000 evil beasts and evil demons waiting outside the city walls, ready for battle. Even the weakest among these monsters was a level 60 special elite, and 5 50-meter-tall, level 80 mythic evil beasts stood at the forefront to current players. This army was invincible. Upon seeing this army of monsters, the players observing the battlefield from several thousand yards away with magic mirrors could not help but shudder. Wiping out a guild town would be child's play for this frightening army. If Beast Emperor wanted to, he could easily drag them into this fight. Zero Wing, do you think that just because I exhausted a large portion of my forces at Crimson Flame Fortress, you will have an opportunity to strike? Beast Emperor sneered at the distant Zero Wing army from atop the city walls. Unfortunately, 100,000 players aren't even enough to serve as a warm-up. Previously, to assist Blackwater, he had exhausted a lot of his forces. During the battle to acquire the Crimson Flame Fortress, he had lost a total of 6 mythic evil beasts and mythic evil demons. The number of Grand Lords and Great Lords he lost was also massive. Even so, he still had 7 mythic monsters under his control, 5 of which were evil beasts and 2 were evil demons. For this upcoming battle, he intended to use the 5 mythic evil beasts as the main force, while reserving the 2 mythic evil demons as a trump card. Although his current army was far from ideal, it was more than enough to stop Zero Wings' army. In reality, he wished that he could avoid pitting his army against Zero Wings, utilizing his defender's advantage to whittle the enemy forces down. However, as he was responsible for summoning the Evil God's branch temple in Ancient Rock City, he was responsible for protecting Ancient Rock City. He could not allow any damage to come to the city. If the city were damaged, not only would he have to spend his own money to repair it, but he would also lose Evil God's temple contribution points. Boss, Blackwater's members are in position. Blackwater has dispatched 3,000 experts and 20,000 elites. In addition, 9 Dragons Emperor has dispatched a 1,000-man expert legion. Roughly 7,000 dark players are also participating in this battle. Once we crush Zero Wings formation, these players will eliminate Zero Wings members, Windhunter reported. A bunch of scavengers. But so be it. In any case, we just need the corpses. It doesn't matter who dies in the end. Beast Emperor said, sneering. Boss, I also received a report stating that a 1,000-man team from Zero Wing has left Silverwing Town and is heading toward the Dark Witch's Tower. I'm not sure what that team is trying to do, but the members are all considerably well equipped, Windhunter said. The Dark Witch's Tower? Isn't that a teleportation point for the Dark players? Why is Zero Wing sending people there? Beast Emperor was confused. Could they be trying to attack the Dark Witch's Tower while they attack Ancient Rock City? That shouldn't be the case. That's the Dark Witch's Tower we're talking about. Not only is it guarded by several hundred Dark NPCs, but there are also 3,000 to 4,000 Dark players there on a regular basis, Windhunter said in surprise. Even if it's true, it doesn't matter. Zero Wing is doomed regardless of what it does. Beast Emperor said, narrowing his eyes. I recall that Dust Edge is questing in that area. Tell him to head to the tower just in case. Think of it as a chance to collect materials to strengthen the evil dragons. Send Dust? Isn't that overkill? Windhunter gaped. Dust Edge was the strongest evil god's apostle under Beast Emperor's command right now. He had acquired one of the evil god's temple's 9 great legacies. Currently, he was only a step away from becoming an evil god's envoy like Beast Emperor. He was the Beast Emperor's greatest trump card. It doesn't matter. Now that we've acquired the Crimson Flame Fortress, we'll have plenty of resources coming our way. There's no longer a need to keep him a secret, Beast Emperor said, waving his hand. He then had Windhunter notify Dust Edge of his orders. After Beast Emperor issued his commands, 3 massive golden magic arrays appeared above Zero Wing's army. These 3 magic arrays were none other than the result of the Divine Beast's Descent magic arrays, which Shifeng had used the guild's accumulated resources to produce. Moreover, all 3 of these magic arrays were powered by elemental sources. In the next moment, 3 golden dragons descended from the sky with deafening roars that echoed throughout Ancient Rock City's area. Go. Destroy Ancient Rock City's defensive magic array. Aqua Rose, who stood on a hill a short distance away from the city, said as she pointed her staff at Ancient Rock City. Immediately, all 3 divine magic dragons charged toward Ancient Rock City. Chapter 1868, Barrier Destroyed. When they saw the 3 divine magic dragons, the rowdy evil beasts and demons fell silent. Each of the divine magic dragons had a wingspan of 600 meters. Just a flap of their wings would be more than enough to kill hundreds of players. Even the spectating crowd could feel their auras from several thousand yards away. The ambient mana on the battlefield also gathered to the divine magic dragons, and just a flap of their wings caused powerful storms to brew. Pitch-black spatial tears appeared as their wings passed. Even many of Zero Wing's members were shocked to see the divine magic dragons. Although most of the Zero Wing members had seen the battle videos depicting these dragons, they had never seen one up close. The combined pressure 3 divine magic dragons exuded was so powerful that even Tier 2 experts felt their bodies grow heavy and their chests constrict, not to mention Tier 1 players. The divine magic dragons are so powerful. Is this the power of a dragon? I knew our guild must have had a trump card. 1 divine magic dragon was already enough to suppress 3 mythic evil beasts. Now that we have 3 divine magic dragons, I can't wait to see how Beast Emperor and his minions stand against us. Many of Zero Wing's members had still been afraid of the evil beast and demon army before them. After all, there were 5 level 80 mythic evil beasts standing between their army and Ancient Rock City. Even if they had 200 miniature ballistas on their side, they would still pay a horrific price to get through these monsters. However, now that they had 3 divine magic dragons on their side, the battle had turned in their favor. While everyone struggled with their shock, under Aqua Rose's command, the 3 divine magic dragons flapped their wings and flew toward Ancient Rock City. Although the 5 evil earth dragons tried to stop the divine magic dragons, the divine magic dragons were too fast. Under Shadow Sword, Flying Shadow, and Minor Wind's control, the 3 divine magic dragons easily avoided the mythic evil beast's attacks and sent their glowing, dark purple claws smashing into Ancient Rock City's defensive magic array. Boom, boom, boom. The 3 divine magic dragons' claws struck the defensive magic array simultaneously, the force behind their powerful attacks instantly creating 3 intense storms that spread around them. Meanwhile, the magic barrier protecting Ancient Rock City shook violently, dimming considerably. Seeing this, Beast Emperor's expression darkened. The various major powers' upper echelons who watched via magic mirrors were astonished. What a powerful attack. When the various superpowers had assaulted ancient rock city, that barrier hadn't even faltered under a tier 4 attack, yet it's trembling after those divine magic dragons struck it. It seems the dragon's damage exceeds the barrier's threshold. At this rate, it will take no time at all to deplete the magic array's energy reserves. 3 divine magic dragons? I hadn't thought that Zero Wing still had such a trump card. It's no wonder why it dares provoke Beast Emperor. It seems Zero Wing really is confident of striking down ancient rock city. The various upper echelons were similarly shocked by the 3 divine magic dragons' power. However, while they were shocked, they weren't particularly afraid. After all, tools that could summon such powerful monsters certainly weren't indefinite. It simply wasn't a permanent source of strength. Damn it. Just one attack from those dragons depleted nearly 6% of the magic array's energy reserves. We can't let those dragons continue to attack the barrier. Activate the Evil God's Temple's offensive magic array and annihilate these dragons. Beast Emperor hurriedly commanded when he saw the defensive magic array's energy reserves. Boss, it'll cost us 3,000 CPs to activate the offensive magic array once. Are you sure you want to use it? Wind Hunter hesitantly asked. Evil God's Temple contribution points were extremely difficult to acquire. These points could not be acquired just by completing quests. They also needed to trade a large amount of resources for these points. Although they had acquired a lot of resources from Blackwater to capture the Crimson Flame Fortress, they had expended a considerable amount. Now they had less than 8,000 CPs available. Do it. I don't want to see the defensive magic array destroyed. Beast Emperor growled as the divine magic dragons launched their second wave of attacks. If the defensive magic array fell, anybody could enter ancient rock city. If the divine magic dragons entered the city, they would wreak unimaginable destruction. As Beast Emperor finished speaking, the defensive magic array lost another 6% of its energy. Seeing this, Wind Hunter bit his tongue. Hurriedly, he activated the Evil God's Temple's offensive magic array. Suddenly, a gigantic dark gray magic array formed above the Evil God's branch temple, located in the center of ancient rock city. The magic array enveloped the city lord's mansion. Even Zero Wing's members, who stood several thousand yards away, noticed this sudden development. Due to the appearance of this magic array, the mana inside and around ancient rock city was obliterated. Now there was not a single trace of mana in the area. Die. After activating the offensive magic array, Wind Hunter aimed and fired at the 3 divine magic dragons. He instantly lost 3,000 Evil God's Temple contribution points. Meanwhile, several hundred dark gray longswords shot out of the dark gray magic array, reaching the divine magic dragons in the blink of an eye. However, to Flying Shadow and the others, who controlled the divine magic dragons, the attack wasn't fast enough to be unstoppable. Immediately, the trio controlled the divine magic dragons to swipe at the approaching swords. Boom, boom, boom. The instant the divine magic dragon's claws met the longswords, however, Flying Shadow and the others felt their arms numb. Several dozen longswords then sliced into them. Suddenly, one deafening explosion after another rang out above ancient rock city, radiating shockwaves that even made the city's defensive magic array tremble. Following which, the 3 divine magic dragons crashed to the ground, creating 3 deep craters where they fell. Some low-ranking evil beasts and evil demons even died as they were crushed. After a few moments, the 3 divine magic dragons stood back up. Now, however, wounds covered their bodies and many of their tough dragon scales had been shattered. Their wings had also been destroyed, preventing flight. Even more frightening was the fact that these dragons couldn't regenerate the damage the dark gray swords had caused. Everyone gasped when they saw the horrific attack. What a powerful move. The various major powers were dazed for a long moment. They had witnessed the power of the divine magic dragons, so they knew just how powerful these summoned creatures were. Yet Beast Emperor had injured them heavily with a single move. Beast Emperor's foundations clearly exceeded their estimations. After such a devastating blow, it was almost impossible for Zero Wing to capture ancient rock city. The evil beast army had surrounded the divine magic dragons soon after they had fallen, and Zero Wing's summoned creatures were embroiled in a heated battle. They couldn't even reach ancient rock city. With only the miniature ballistas and its players' attacks, Zero Wing would need hours of non-stop combat to destroy the city's barrier. Big Sis Aqua, I'm struggling to control my divine magic dragon. Even fighting the mythic evil beast is taxing. I can't approach ancient rock city's defensive magic array at all. What should we do? Flying Shadow, who currently controlled a divine magic dragon, reported. It felt as if he were trying to control a broken machine. Not only were the divine magic dragon's reactions delayed, but the dragon's strength had also fallen. Sure enough, trying to strike down ancient Rock City won't be easy. Aqua Rose could not help but sigh. Since that is the case, let's go all out. The three of you, use the divine magic dragon's final power. Understood. Flying Shadow, Shadow Sword, and Minor Wind nodded to Aqua Rose's command. In the next moment, the three divine magic dragons released furious roars, the resulting shockwaves shoving back the great lord-ranked evil beasts. Suddenly, the divine magic dragons spread their jaws as a threefold magic array manifested before them. The three dragons then fired 3 black-white breath attacks at ancient Rock City's defensive magic array. This move was the strongest these divine magic dragons possessed. Tier 4 Curse, Shadowlight Breath. In the blink of an eye, all 3 breath attacks plowed into the barrier around ancient Rock City. After persisting for 2 seconds, the indestructible magic barrier shattered, transforming into countless particles of light before it disappeared. Chapter 1869, Dark Witch's Tower. As the magic barrier protecting ancient Rock City disappeared, the distant spectating players' mouths fell wide open. They simply could not bring themselves to believe that the 3 heavily injured divine magic dragons actually destroyed such a powerful defensive magic array. Damn it! How is this possible? Beast Emperor's complexion became incredibly gloomy when he saw the magic barrier disappearing. The magic barrier was the protective canopy of ancient Rock City. Without it, anybody could enter and leave the city freely, as well as rain destruction upon the city. Before Beast Emperor could react, Aqua Rose raised her staff and commanded, "Miniature Ballistas, advance. Attack ancient Rock City with everything you've got." In the next moment, all 200 miniature ballistas started closing in on ancient Rock City. When Heaven's Burial took control of ancient Rock City, the guild had repaired and constructed defensive structures around the city. However, after the evil god's temple took over, as evil demons and evil beasts lacked the knowledge and ability to control these defensive structures, these things all became decorations. As a result, the miniature ballistas could approach ancient Rock City with impunity. Ancient Rock City soon entered the miniature ballista's attack range. Shoo, shoo, shoo. Immediately, 200 exploding arrows flew into the sky and pelted down on the buildings inside ancient Rock City. Following which, a series of blasts reverberated throughout the city. Just one volley of arrows already flattened many buildings in the city's outer area. They dare? Beast Emperor felt his heart bleed when he saw many of the accommodations for evil demons getting razed. He angrily commanded all of his evil beasts and evil demons, "Go! Destroy every one of those ballistas." At this moment he no longer cared about the defense of the city. All he cared about was the destruction of Zero Wing's miniature ballistas. Meanwhile, due to the miniature ballistas' attacks, the evil beasts and evil demons controlled by NPCs belonging to the evil god's temple also took action. These powerful monsters joined the evil beasts and evil demons under Beast Emperor's control and charging toward Zero Wing's army. Suddenly, a swarm of monsters could be seen rushing toward Zero Wing's army. This scene made the Zero Wing members handling the miniature ballistas shudder involuntarily. However, Aqua Rose remained utterly unfazed by this situation, immediately ordering the activation of the movement-type defensive magic array. A moment later, a magic barrier enveloped the entire army. Miniature ballistas, focus on those monsters. Everyone else, coordinate your attacks with the ballistas. Flying Shadow, your group will deal with those mythic monsters. Everyone in Zero Wing's army responded quickly and started executing Aqua Rose's commands. Although the monsters were numerous and high-leveled, their side also possessed a defensive magic array. As long as the defensive magic array held, these evil demons and evil beasts could not hurt them. Not to mention, their side also had the firepower of 200 miniature ballistas. For a time, the miniature ballistas could be seen continuously firing exploding arrows at the approaching evil demons and evil beasts, the resulting blasts even sending the great lords stumbling backward. The lords that got struck were immediately placed in a heavily injured state. As for the chieftains, they got killed with just a few shots. In the meantime, Zero Wing's members were also launching attacks in a frenzy from inside the defensive magic array. However, despite Zero Wing's fierce offensive, the evil demon and evil beast army showed no signs of stopping. They assaulted Zero Wing's defensive magic array relentlessly, depleting its energy reserves. As the evil beasts and evil demons died one after another, the energy reserves of Zero Wing's defensive magic array also declined rapidly. This forced Aqua Rose to replenish its energy repeatedly using magic crystals. For a time, the sounds of roars, slaughter, and explosions became the main theme of this hilly land. In this battlefield, an individual's strength was extremely insignificant. Only the magical class players capable of using large-scale spells were slightly more useful than the average player. The magnificent battle stupefied the spectating players. The dark players who had been planning to ambush Zero Wing's army simply stood still right now, none of them daring to join the fray. After all, the level of this battle exceeded their understanding of battles between players. In this conflict, individual techniques were absolutely meaningless. If they dared charge into the battlefield, let alone reaching Zero Wing's army, just crossing the miniature ballista's field of fire was already plenty difficult. With the defensive magic array up, they wouldn't even get to touch Zero Wing's members. They would only become live targets for Zero Wing's members if they entered the fray now. Meanwhile, as Zero Wing's army was fighting a war of attrition with Beast Emperor, Shifeng's team of 1,000 arrived at a location a short distance from the Dark Witch's Tower. The Dark Witch's Tower stood next to a small lake inside a valley. The environment around the tower was considerably good. In fact, this place was originally a nice town. Unfortunately, an undead Great Wizard had targeted the town and turned it into a place of death. The Great Wizard had also specifically constructed the Dark Witch's Tower here to research death magic. As more time passed, the town here became a locus for the dark forces. At this point, it was already a resting place for dark players in the Ur Empire. When Shifeng's team moved within 3,000 yards of the Dark Witch's Tower, sirens in the town suddenly rang, putting every player inside the town on high alert. Someone actually dares approach the gathering place of us dark players. It should be a team that lost their way. With so many of us dark players here, who would possibly dare approach this place willingly? Lost their way? Whatever. This is a good opportunity. I haven't completed my kill quest for today. It's not a bad idea to use these players as a sacrifice. The dark players inside the Dark Witch's Tower all started laughing and chatting merrily, convinced that this team of players was a bunch of fools to have actually stumbled upon the Dark Witch's Tower. After all, these players had not investigated which places normal players should avoid in the Ur Empire. As the dark forces were relatively weak on the continent of God's domain, the dark forces gathering spots in neutral maps would all have alarms set up to help the gathering spots residents to take precautions to protect themselves. These alarms would give out a warning when over 100 normal players or NPCs entered a certain range of the gathering spot. They really came. A black-clad man covered in bandages, who was enjoying a glass of wine in the town's bar, could not help but smile when he heard the town's alarms going off. He then turned to look at the beautiful woman dressed in dark blue robes sitting beside him and asked, "Will Commander Spirit take action first, or shall I do the honors? Although I very much wish to repay Zero Wing for what it did to my adventurer team, I am more curious about how capable the treasured apostle nurtured by Beast Emperor is," Veiled Spirit replied, smiling as she looked at the bandaged man beside her. Nowadays, Beast Emperor was extremely famous among dark players. After all, he controlled an army of evil beasts and evil demons, a force that nobody could afford to underestimate. Meanwhile, although Dust Edge himself did not possess much fame, Beast Emperor had praised him highly and even agreed to cooperate with Dark Soul so long as the Alliance provided Dust Edge with as many resources as possible. Seeing as Beast Emperor was willing to invest so many resources in a single person, it was obvious just how much Beast Emperor valued Dust Edge's potential. Beast Emperor and Dark Soul had been acquainted with each other for quite some time already, yet Dark Soul had yet to dig up any information on Dust Edge even now. Zero Wing's arrival presented Veiled Spirit with a good opportunity to witness Dust Edge's abilities. She naturally wouldn't let it go to waste. "Fine, then let's treat this as the beginning of the mutual trust between our two sides," Dust Edge said, nodding. He then raised his wine glass and added, "They should be very close to reaching the town walls now. Let us head out as well." After saying so, Dust Edge stood up and left the bar. Veiled Spirit and the dozen or so subordinates that came with her followed after him. Chapter 1870 Helltank's Might. A large number of dark players had gathered in the Dark Witch's Tower's watchtower, gazing down at Zero Wing's members as they fell into formation in the distance. What? They actually plan to attack the Dark Witch's tower? They're insane. Hundreds of NPCs guard the town, not to mention the defense turrets and arrow towers. Repelling a 1,000-man team isn't even a warm-up. The Dark players could not help but laugh, ridiculing Zero Wing as they watched Shi Feng and his companions prepare for the assault. Although the Dark Witch's tower was a very small town, it had robust defenses. Not only did the town have defensive structures, but it also had a defensive magic array. Furthermore, thousands of Dark players occupied the town. Even an army of tens of thousands of elite players would fall swiftly if it tried to attack the town, let alone a 1,000-man force. Even a superpower would have to pay a hefty price to destroy the Dark Witch's tower. This was why most superpowers simply ignored this Dark player hub. Look at their guild emblems. They seem to be Zero Wing's members, a Tier 2 ranger stated, surprised after using eagle eyes. Isn't Zero Wing attacking Ancient Rock City? Why has it come all the way here to attack the Dark Witch's tower? They must have gotten the wrong memo from their superiors, a level 56 assassin said, laughing. But since they're here, we can have some fun. Blackwater has offered a generous bounty for Zero Wing's heads. Normally, Zero Wing's members are very challenging prey, but this is a golden opportunity. We have over 3,000 players in the Dark Witch's tower. Wiping out this 1,000-man team will be a piece of cake. We can't let the town's NPCs get to them first. The various Dark players present in the Dark Witch's tower didn't take these Zero Wing members seriously in the least. Rather, all they saw as they looked at their enemies were walking sacks of cash. Meanwhile, Dust Edge and Veiled Spirits group had left the Dark Witch's tower's walls and quietly observed Zero Wing's team, astonishment flashing in their eyes. All of these Zero Wing members were merely elites. Aside from the 100 or so players that wore black cloaks, every member of the force was a Tier 1 player. Moreover, they could tell that the 100-plus cloaked players weren't actually combatants, so they were even weaker than Zero Wing's elite members. Big Sis Spirit, is Zero Wing attempting suicide? It's actually attacking the Dark Witch's tower with such a team? With such standards, we won't even need to get involved. The town's usual players are more than enough to eliminate this force, a level 57 Tier 2 Berserker said, clicking his tongue as he observed Zero Wing's team. They had come all the way to the Dark Witch's tower precisely because they had heard that Zero Wing might attack the town, but this 1,000-man team was simply disappointing. It would have a painful time just trying to reach the town's gates, let alone destroying the Dark Witch's tower. Veiled Spirit pondered the situation in silence. She couldn't figure out what Zero Wing was trying to do. This is indeed disappointing. I had wanted to give Zero Wing a taste of an evil god's apostle's might, but this team isn't worth the effort. Just let the Dark players handle them, Dust Edge said, shaking his head. Since that is the case, there's no longer a need for us to stay. The battle in Ancient Rock City is growing increasingly intense. If we hurry, we should be able to claim some scraps. Veiled Spirit agreed with Dust Edge's estimation. They couldn't afford to casually reveal either Shadow Claw or Dust Edge's trump cards. Using them against a 1,000-man expert team from Zero Wing might be worth it, but it would be a waste to use them on a 1,000-man elite team. As Veiled Spirit and the others prepared to leave, the town's Dark players were about to make their move. Over 2,000 Dark players charged out of the town, not even bothering to organize themselves into any formation as they rushed towards Zero Wing's members. Dark players like them had already participated and grown familiar with large-scale combat. They might have taken the battle seriously if this Zero Wing force had quite a few experts, but all of these players were elites or weaker. Players of such standards weren't worth a serious effort. As the 2,000-plus Dark players approached, Zero Wing's elite members began to grow nervous. Guild leader, they're less than 1,000 yards away, a level 55 Tier 1 ranger anxiously reported to Shi Feng. The Dark players charging toward them were veterans of outdoor PvP, and every one of these Dark players radiated a dense bloodlust. Over 40 Tier 2 experts ran among these Dark players. On the other hand, they rarely participated in PvP, usually focusing on raiding team dungeons. Defeating elite players like them would be a piece of cake for these Dark players. Good. Engineering team, begin the assembly, Shi Feng ordered, nodding. In a moment, the engineering team will be responsible for the offensive. The rest of you just need to focus on defending our position. Hearing Shi Feng's command, the cloaked engineers removed their black cloaks and retrieved the Hell Tank's components from their bags. When Zero Wing's elite players saw the 100 level 40-plus lifestyle players, they were stunned. They had hoped that these cloaked players were exceptionally strong. They had never expected these comrades to be lifestyle players. On top of that, these lifestyle players were going to fight. When the distant dark players saw the level 40+ lifestyle players, they were just as stunned. However, their expressions quickly soured, becoming serious. The 100 engineers swiftly assembled 6 colossal tanks, and despite the 1,000 yards separating them, the dark players could hear the engine whistle roar as the tank's immense power swept over them. Good. 800 yards ahead. Fire at will. Shifeng issued the command once the 6 Hell tanks were ready for battle. Under Shifeng's command, the engineers' eyes glowed with excitement as they operated their Hell tanks. They then aimed the Hell cannons at the dark players and fired. Suddenly, a crimson, twofold magic array appeared before each Hell tank's gun barrel. Boom. Immediately, the 6 Hell cannons released balls of crimson light. These crimson light balls reached the dark players almost instantly. By the time the dark players reacted, the light balls had descended on the disorderly crowd. Boom, boom, boom. The moment the crimson light balls struck, 6 towering pillars of fire rose up amidst the dark player army, each encompassing a radius of 35 yards. The towering flame pillars were clearly visible from several thousand yards away. As the flame pillars faded, they revealed 6 lava pits on the battlefield, glowing with a red light. Every player that had been caught in the AoEs had transformed into streaks of white light before disappearing. With a single round of attacks, over 600 dark players had been removed from the battlefield. Chapter 1871, Nightmare on the Battlefield. When over 600 PvP experts were suddenly vaporized, the dark players charging towards Zero Wing's team slid to a halt and stared at the empty lava pits before them. Damn it! What are those things? After losing nearly half of their allies, the other dark players panicked. They had seen war weapons in action before, but the Hell tank's speed and power were beyond their understanding of such weapons. The Tier 2 experts on this battlefield even had a high chance of avoiding defense turrets' attacks from over 500 yards away, especially the speed-type classes. Yet, despite the nearly 800 yards between them and their quarry, the Hell tank's balls of light had rained down on their heads by the time they had realized that they were under attack. The power of the Hell cannon's attacks was simply horrific, easily rivaling the power of Tier 3 large-scale destruction spells. Even a Tier 2 metric tons would have to activate a life-saving skill to survive such an attack. These dark players felt as if they stood within 6 magic towers' attack range. The dark players that had chosen to remain in the Dark Witch's Tower to watch the battle had lost the laughter in their eyes. Now their gazes only contained fear as they watched the 6 Hell tanks. Veiled Spirit, who stood in the watchtower, couldn't help but frown at the scene. The speed and power of the Hell tank's attacks were horrific. Expert players were no more than ants before the monstrous vehicles. Those war weapons were basically mobile magic towers. How does Zero Wing have such powerful war weapons? We're doomed. We don't have any war weapons. How are we supposed to deal with those things? What's there to be afraid of? We may not have war weapons, but the Dark Witch's Tower does. Moreover, the town has a defensive magic array. If Zero Wing's war weapons get near the town's NPCs will bombard them with the defense turrets. Besides, with how powerful those attacks were, those war weapons definitely have long cooldowns. Once our people get close to the weapons, not only will we kill Zero Wing's members, but we'll also use the war weapons for target practice. Although the might of the Hell tank's cannons had shocked many people, some more experienced experts retained their cool and analyzed the vehicle's weaknesses, developing a plan to combat the war weapons. Very quickly, the other dark players also came to realize the Hell tank's weaknesses. Instead of retreating, they resumed their charge in an attempt to reach the Hell tanks. Although they had never used a war weapon themselves, they knew that all war weapons shared a single flaw: they were vulnerable at short range. Like the miniature ballistas bombarding ancient Rock City, once hostile players drew near, the war weapons could be destroyed with a few attacks, regardless of how much destructive power they possessed. The remaining 1,000+ dark players dashed towards the Hell tanks in a frenzy, intent on destroying the war weapons before the Hell tanks' cooldowns ended. Guild leader, they've resumed their charge. Should we form a defensive line? Seeing the dark players draw closer, Zero Wing's elite members grew restless again. The Hell tank's power gave them some hope of victory, and as long as they protected these massive weapons, they could defeat these dark players. But despite the dark players closing the distance to 200 yards, Shifeng hadn't given the command to defend the war weapons. If they allowed these dark players to engage the Hell tanks in melee combat, they'd be doomed. No. Let them come. Shi Feng waved a hand, signaling for his companions to hold their positions. Following their guild leader's orders, Zero Wing's elite members had no choice but to stand their ground, watching as the dark players approached. 200 yards. 150 yards. 100 yards. Brothers, we're almost at the war weapons. Once we destroy them, victory will be ours. Ranged players, attack with everything you've got once you're in range. The dark players couldn't help their excitement as they reduced the distance between them and the hell tanks to 50 yards. At this time, Shi Feng raised his longsword into the air. He then pointed it at the approaching dark players and shouted, "All hell tanks, move out. Leave none of them alive." The engineers, itching for action, eagerly stepped on the tank's accelerator. The engines roared to life once more, and the 6 hell tanks jerked forward, speeding towards the dark players in a V formation. What are they trying to do? The advancing dark players were stunned as the hell tanks raced towards them. However, before the dark players could react, each hell tank released 14 flame spears. Meanwhile, each flame spear carried power at the peak of Tier 2. A total of 84 flame spears flew at the dark players simultaneously, as if 84 miniature ballistas had launched their payload at the same time, but unlike the ballista's exploding arrows, the flame spears weren't AoEs. Shoo, shoo, shoo. When the flame spears made contact, light flashed among the dark player army. Many of the melee players leading the charge, who had failed to defend themselves in time, transformed into stakes of light and vanished on the spot. Although some players had activated life-saving skills or dodged the attacks in time, surviving the first volley, the flame spears had claimed over 50 dark players' lives. However, the surviving melee players slid to a halt once more, too afraid to approach the hell tanks after watching that wave of attacks. Ranged players, hurry and attack. Some melee players shouted, snapping out of their daze. The dark-ranked players then launched spells and arrows, aiming for the approaching hell tanks. Just as the spells and arrows were about to slam into the hell tanks, the 6 war weapons activated their magic shields. A magic barrier, able to absorb up to 3 million damage and possessing Tier 3 defensive capabilities, surrounded each hell tank. The hell tanks pushed through the rain of spells and arrows, receiving no damage whatsoever. How is this possible? Seeing the unscathed hell tanks stunned the dark players. They had never thought that these war weapons had defensive magic arrays as well. As the dark players tried to think of a way to deal with the enemy weapons, the hell tanks reached the melee players that led the army. Without slowing in the slightest, the hell tanks bulldozed through the dark players in their way. The Tier 2 MTs at the forefront were immediately thrown over 20 yards back, their HPs decreasing by nearly half. Unfortunately for them, the Tier 1 melee players died instantly. The 6 hell tanks charged forward like a herd of stampeding bulls. Not only did they break up the crowd of dark players, but they also killed over 100 players as they sped through. Run. Run quickly. Don't let these things get near you. After watching the hell tanks slaughter their allies, the fighting dark players realized one thing. This battle wasn't a battle at all. It was a one-sided massacre. It's too late to escape now. Shi Feng could not help but shake his head and chuckle as he watched the fleeing dark players. Compared to their ranged offensive capabilities, tanks shone brightest in close-range combat. An intermediate tank had even higher strength than a Tier 3 berserker, and not even a Tier 3 assassin could outrun it. It was truly a weapon of slaughter on a battlefield. After just a short moment, the hell tanks killed every one of the 2,000+ dark players that had participated in the battle. Now, ownerless weapons and equipment littered the field. Chapter 1872, Evil God Takes Action. Once the hell tanks had wiped out the attacking dark players, Shi Feng instructed his guildmates to loot the battlefield. The dark players that operated in the Orc Empire were very well equipped on average. Otherwise, they wouldn't have dared to join the glory battlefield that was the Empire. Fortunately, Shi Feng could use the weapons and equipment these dark players had dropped as compensation for the magic crystals the hell tanks had expended and to make a small profit. Naturally, he wouldn't leave the items for other players to loot. However, Zero Wing's members only took action sometime after Shi Feng had given the order. They had still been stunned at the hell tanks' performance. Before these hell tanks, Tier 2 experts were a joke. They couldn't even escape the hell tanks' destruction. Despite the 1,000+ surviving dark players fleeing for their lives in every direction, the 6 war weapons annihilated them all. Zero Wing's members watched the war weapons, their eyes sparkling as if they gazed at a piece of top-tier equipment. These tanks are amazing. I can't wait to see how these dark players plan to maintain their arrogance around Silverwing Town now that we have these tanks. I wonder if the guild will give a similar tank to the guild teams? If every 1,000-man legion had 5 or 6 of these things, we'd be unstoppable in the fields. Keep dreaming. How could the guild casually afford to arm a guild team with such powerful tanks? I'd be satisfied if my team had just one of these tanks, not to mention 5 or 6. While Zero Wings members cleared the battlefield of items, they softly discussed the guild's new war weapons. When Shi Feng overheard these discussions, he couldn't help his bitter smile. The necessary materials to produce the Hell tank were extremely precious. He had already depleted the materials the guild had fought to collect to craft the 6 Hell tanks before him. If he wanted to produce more, he would have to rely on guild members to collect the necessary materials from team dungeons. After all, team dungeons had cooldowns, and not every team dungeon dropped the necessary materials. Grinding for the necessary materials wouldn't be possible. However, his team members' comments did remind him of something. He could arm the Zero Wing teams that patrolled around Silverwing Town with the Hell tanks. Although doing so would cost a lot of magic crystals and rapidly deplete the Hell tank's durability, it would significantly increase Silverwing Town's security. Current players were no match for these war weapons, and several Hell tanks could end a battle of several thousand players within minutes. After his team had cleaned up the battlefield, Shi Feng ordered the 6 Hell tanks to bombard the Dark Witch's tower. Now that more than half of the Dark players in the town had died, the remaining Dark players posed no threat. All they had to do was destroy the town's defensive magic array. Then they could storm the town and destroy its magic array core and teleportation device. Once those had been destroyed, they would rend the Dark Witch's tower powerless. Zero Wings coming. What should we do? Meanwhile, the Dark players who had watched the battle from the town's watchtower wore ugly expressions as they gazed at Zero Wings members. Over 2,000 expert players had died in just a few minutes. To make matters worse, not a single one of them had killed any of Zero Wings players. This was utterly terrifying. These Dark players had been confident that Zero Wings members couldn't touch the Dark Witch's tower, much less destroy the town. However, after witnessing the Hell tank's destructive power and their ridiculous movement speed, they realized that the town's defense turrets and arrow towers would be useless against the enemy war weapons. So, this is the trump card Zero Wing has hidden all this time? Even Veiled Spirit was a little afraid as the 6 tanks approached the town. Although she had prepared a trump card in the form of a magic array that enhanced players' power, she wasn't certain that any player at this stage of the game could stop those tanks, regardless of their buffs. Not bad. It's no wonder why Zero Wing only sent a 1,000-man elite team here. It turns out that they've prepared such a move. Dust Edge gave the Hell tanks a bright smile. I hadn't thought that those players were worth my involvement, but it seems that they just barely qualify. You have a way to defeat them? Veiled Spirit asked curiously as she gave Dust Edge, who brimmed with confidence, a look. Of course. I can also use this opportunity to show you your collaborator's strength, Dust Edge said, nodding. However, I will require some sacrifices. Do you mind if I trouble you to capture some? Sacrifices. Veiled Spirit repeated, confused. I'm talking about players. I need a large number of players. The more the better. Since this is a hub for the Dark Forces, these NPCs won't mind if players slaughter each other. And the remaining players in the Dark Witch's tower aren't particularly valuable anymore anyway, right? Dust Edge asked, chuckling as he eyed the Dark players as they tried to flee from the town. I'll also need to borrow 2 of your peak experts. My subordinates? Veiled Spirit frowned, turning to Dust Edge with a frosty expression. Although she did not know why he needed sacrifices, it definitely wasn't for something good. She refused to allow her subordinates to become this madman's sacrifices. Relax. I won't sacrifice your subordinates. Rather, I want to grant them peerless strength. Dust Edge explained when he realized that Veiled Spirit had misunderstood his intention. That won't be a problem. Veiled Spirit agreed. She then instructed her subordinates to gather the feeling players in the Dark Witch's tower. This time she had brought 300 experts with her, each of which was incredibly powerful. They were far stronger than the Dark players who idled in the town. Under Veiled Spirit's command, Shadowclaw's 300 experts took action. Using the tools Dust Edge had granted them, they captured the players that tried to escape the town. What are you trying to do? Why are you capturing us? Shadowclaw's prisoners soon found themselves bound by magical chains, their fear clear on their faces as they looked at Dust Edge and his companions. "Oh, it's nothing. I'm just going to make you contribute to the Dark Witch's Tower's defense," Dust Edge said, laughing when he saw over 300 bound players. "You should feel so lucky to become a part of my new power. Hurry it up. Zero Wings team is starting its attack. The town's defensive magic array won't last long." Veiled Spirit snapped anxiously as she watched the 6 hell tanks fire upon the Dark Witch's Tower. Although the Dark Witch's Tower had a defensive magic array to protect it, it was much weaker than the one around Ancient Rock City. If Tier 3 large-scale destruction spells bombarded it, it wouldn't last long. "Relax. My preparations are complete. Now we just need 2 of your subordinates to stand in the center of the magic array," Dust Edge responded as he finished writing over 30 lines of Crimson Divine Runes in the air. He then merged the Divine Runes with the Crimson Magic Array before him, excitedly proclaiming, "Soon you'll get to witness the power of the almighty evil god." At Dust Edge's words, the 2 experts Veiled Spirit had chosen began to panic as they stared at the magic array. However, when their leader urged them forward, they had no choice but to steel their resolve and step into the array. "Almighty evil god, I offer you immortal souls. Please grant me an immortal body to smite my enemies," Dust Edge sang before tapping the butt of his staff on the array. The 300-plus dark players inside the magic array instantly collapsed like puppets as their strings were cut. In the next moment, the space above tore, leaving a gaping black wound. A boundless aura then poured out of the spatial tear, and everything within the Dark Witch's Tower froze within its presence. Chapter 1873, Evil Dragon's Power. The appearance of the spatial tear above the Dark Witch's Tower immobilized every player inside the town. It was as if time around them had stopped. "What kind of monster is in there?" Veiled Spirit and the others could not help but be frightened when they felt the horrific pressure flooding out of the spatial tear. They could sense that this horrific pressure did not originate from the spatial tear itself but from a creature residing inside the spatial tear instead. This was a pressure that they had never felt in all the time they'd played God's Domain. They did not doubt that, should the creature inside the spatial tear come out, they would instantly die and disappear just from the pressure the creature exuded. A few seconds after the spatial tear appeared, the 2 Shadowclaw members standing inside the Crimson Magic Array started screaming in agony, their lung-piercing shrieks giving all who heard them goosebumps. "Dust Edge, didn't you say nothing would happen to them?" Veiled Spirit questioned, a chilly expression appearing on her face as she glared at Dust Edge. The 2 members she selected were peak experts of Shadowclaw. They were also one of the few Tier 2 experts the adventure team had. If their accounts were to get crippled due to this incident, Shadowclaw would sustain a tremendous blow. "Relax, they'll be fine. In fact, once the ritual is over, they'll feel much better than before. You can even label them as the strongest players in existence in God's Domain right now," Dust Edge explained, laughing as he looked at the 2 Shadowclaw members in the magic array. Veiled Spirit was utterly confused by Dust Edge's words. Just as she was about to demand a clearer explanation from him, the 2 people standing inside the magic array suddenly started transforming. Originally, the 2 people were already tall and robust men. Now, however, their muscles started bulging rapidly like balloons. Very quickly, their bodies lost their human form. A pair of dark gray wings sprouted out of their backs and silver scales covered their bodies. The transformation process continued for roughly 7 seconds and produced 2 10-meter-tall dragons. The 2 dragons then let loose deafening roars that echoed throughout the town. Dragons? Veiled Spirit and the others could not help but be stupefied by this sight. They could clearly feel that the 2 dragons before them were different from the pseudo-dragons they had come across before. Although the 2 dragons before them were only level 56 _ the same level as the players themselves _ they could feel a pressure coming from the dragons that was a result of a difference in life ratings. This meant that the 2 dragons before them were not pseudo-dragon creatures but real dragons. They're still not at the level of real dragons. However, they have been given new life by the evil god. Although their life ratings are not at the standard of dragons, they should be at the level of archaic species. You can call them evil dragons, Dust Edge said as he looked at the 2 evil dragons. With a hint of excitement in his tone, he continued, "Unlike lowly evil demons, evil dragons are players. They are somewhat similar to the dark mutation you guys have, but the transformation is more thorough than dark mutation. Moreover, it is also much stronger. At this moment, they are already at the Tier 3 standard. They possess greater power and life force than even Tier 3 NPCs of the same level." Of course, this is not their peak strength, yet my power is still incomplete right now. I'll need many more resources to unlock my strength. Once I have fully grasped this power, I'll be able to make them even stronger. Evil dragons? Veiled Spirit was shocked as she looked at the massive creatures before her. No wonder Beast Emperor is willing to nurture you at all costs. Dark mutation was something she was very familiar with. However, dark mutation raised only a player's combat power. The improvement was not sufficient for a qualitative transformation. The two players that had turned into evil dragons, however, had undergone a qualitative transformation. Not only had their tiers increased by 1, but even their life ratings now rivaled that of archaic species. In other words, the two players before her already possessed the strength of level 56, Tier 3 archaic species. This was simply frightening. A Tier 3 archaic species was originally already extremely difficult to deal with. After all, the attributes such a monster possessed were simply too much for current players to handle. The only saving grace was that the combat standards of monsters were relatively low on average. They also grasped very few skills. If players cooperated properly, defeating such a monster was still possible. However, a player transformed into a Tier 3 archaic species would be an absolute nightmare for current players. Not to mention, said player would be able to control their new body as if it were their own. Let alone a 100-man team of Tier 2 experts, even a 1,000-man team of Tier 2 experts would be no match for such a player. Just thinking about meeting such a player on a battlefield made Veiled Spirit shudder in fear. The destructive power of such a player would far exceed that of a Tier 4 mythic monster controlled by players. How do you two feel right now? Are you still accustomed to your bodies? Veiled Spirit asked the two evil dragon players curiously. When players transformed their bodies using dark mutation, they would initially have trouble adapting to their new bodies. Now that the two players before her had taken on a form that was nothing like the human body, chances were high that they would have great difficulty controlling their bodies. I've never felt better. Even without concentrating, I can easily grasp the movements in my surroundings. I can even hear the conversation of two players that are hiding behind a wall 200 yards away. Indeed. Those two are actually planning to report our actions here to other dark players. Those two players are simply tired of living. After saying so, the two evil dragons flapped their wings, their massive bodies transforming into a powerful gale as they flew toward the two hidden players. By the time the two hidden players noticed the two evil dragons' movements, the latter had already crossed a distance of 30 yards. Before the two expert players could move 30 yards away from their original hiding spot, the two massive evil dragons had already appeared before them and swiped their claws at them. In the next moment, Dust Edge and Veiled Spirit's group heard a loud bang coming from the evil dragon's direction. The ground the two level 55, Tier 2 experts stood on shattered instantly. As for the two experts themselves, they had died on the spot. What power! Veiled Spirit gasped involuntarily. Too strong. Too fast. Two Tier 2 experts were actually killed just like that. Even level 56 mythic monsters weren't capable of executing such a clean and swift attack. Meanwhile, the other Tier 2 experts of Shadowclaw also shrank back reflexively. Their reaction was because they'd imagined themselves in the place of those two Tier 2 experts and realized that they wouldn't fare all that much better than those two players either. They would almost certainly suffer the same fate as that unfortunate duo. Good. Very good. After witnessing the two evil dragon players killing two Tier 2 experts instantly, Dust Edge turned to look at Veiled Spirit and said proudly, "This is the Evil God's Temple's true power. What do you think? As long as you all have this power, let alone the Or Empire, even taking control of human empires won't be a problem." Indeed. Veiled Spirit nodded in agreement with Dust Edge's words. She too felt that the partnership between Dark Soul and Beast Emperor held great promise. As long as Dark Soul had a large number of evil dragons under its command, removing Crimson Emperor and Unyielding Soul from the Dark Knight Empire would be a piece of cake. Alright, now that you two have warmed up, it's about time we go greet our guests, Dust Edge said, smiling as he turned to look at Zero Wings members, who were close to destroying the Dark Witch's Tower's defensive magic array already. At Dust Edge's words, the two evil dragon players promptly turned to look at the approaching hell tanks, sneers appearing on their faces. Previously they had still felt somewhat fearful of the hell tanks. Now, however, it was a different story. Following which, the two evil dragon players flapped their wings and swiftly flew out of the town's magic barrier and straight toward the hell tanks. Chapter 1874, Evil Dragon vs. Tank. As the two dark gray evil dragons ascended, leaving the Dark Witch's tower, their massive frames, powerful roaring, and the intense pressure they radiated due to their upgraded life ratings quickly attracted Zero Wing's attention. Are those dragons? How does the Dark Witch's tower have two dragons? How is this possible? They're actually Great Lord-ranked archaic species. Zero Wing's members, who stood some distance behind the Hell tanks, watched the two massive beasts fly away from the town with astonished expressions. They could not understand why dragons would be in the Dark Witch's tower. Tier 3 archaic species were an absolute nightmare for current players, and although the two evil dragons were only level 56, they wouldn't be easy opponents. Guild leader, what should we do? The dragons are too fast, slightly faster than the Hell tanks, the engineers controlling the team's war weapons asked worriedly. As engineers, they were familiar with the Hell tanks' flaws. Although the Hell tanks were extremely powerful against players, they were fairly useless against monsters. Monsters had much higher HP and defense, and if they pitted a Hell tank against a Great Lord of the same level, it would take a considerable amount of time to defeat the monster with the Hell cannon and flame spears. Furthermore, a Great Lord was considered a Tier 3 monster, so it would be more than capable of causing substantial damage to the Hell tank, depleting its durability. If the two level 56 evil dragons were allowed to fight the Hell tanks would definitely lose. Evil dragons? Sure Phone watched the approaching dragons with a strange look. He could feel that these two were not actual dragons but pseudo-dragon creatures. If they were actual dragons, his heavenly dragon's breath would have given him a massive basic attribute boost since the fragmented legendary ring hadn't reacted. He knew that these evil dragons were something else. Moreover, he could sense the evil dragons' human-like emotions. When he looked in their eyes, it was as if the two evil dragons were children that had just found a new toy and were eager to play with it. That wasn't an emotion monsters should experience. Zero Wing die, the two evil dragons bellowed. The two evil dragons widened their jaws and spat a tornado-like breath attack. Space Tor was the attacks flew towards two of the 6 Hell tanks. Since the attacks had been launched from a close distance, the Hell tanks couldn't dodge in time. Boom. As the two tornadoes dissipated, they revealed the massive craters the attacks had torn in the ground, each encompassing a 50-yard radius with a 5-meter depth. Both of the Hell tanks' magic shields had shattered instantly, and the power of the breath attacks left Zero Wing's members flabbergasted. Impossible. The dragons actually spoke? Are players controlling them? That can't be right. Even if they are controlled by players, they shouldn't be able to speak. Their destructive power is insane. They actually broke the magic shields that not even hundreds of Tier 1 and Tier 2 players could destroy. Everyone was shocked as they watched the Hell tanks' magic shields shatter, and the battlefield's new craters. The evil dragon's breath attack was clearly stronger than the Hell tank's Hell cannons, but the watching players were more confused by the dragon's ability to speak. Moreover, the dragon's words had been meant for Zero Wing. NPCs and monsters definitely weren't capable of such a thing. So, this is the power of the evil dragons? Veiled Spirit, who stood in the town's watchtower, was just as shocked by the evil dragon's power. With such great destructive power, these evil dragons would be of immense help when sieging a town or city. If Dust Edge could mass-produce such beings, the evil god's temple would truly be invincible in the Ur Empire. Ah, wonderful. Destroy Zero Wing's tanks and teach those players how foolish they really are. Dust Edge's eyes glowed with excitement as he watched the evil dragons. The two evil dragons were still incomplete, yet they had displayed such frightening prowess. Once he collected the remaining materials and perfected the magic array, he could create even stronger evil dragons. A measly guild like Zero Wing would pose no threat to the evil god's temple, and the temple would claim the Ur Empire for its own. The two evil dragons nodded in response to Dust Edge's command, elation filling their hearts. The Hell tanks, which had slaughtered thousands of dark players like helpless sheep, were now at their mercy. This newfound power was intoxicating. The two evil dragons flew toward the two Hell tanks, which had lost their magic shields, and assaulted the war weapons with claw swipes. Crap. They're coming. The engineers controlling the Hell tanks panicked and tried to move out of the dragon's way, but the creatures were too fast before the Hell tanks could adjust their trajectory. The evil dragons had reached them, reaching towards the vehicles with their massive claws. Boom. The earth beneath the two tanks shattered as dust and dirt flew into the air due to the shockwave. As the dust settled, a new shocking scene was revealed. Dust Edge, Veiled Spirit and their dark companions had assumed that the Hell tanks were finished, but the two tanks were safe and sound. The evil dragon's claws had only left a few white scratches on their armored shells. How are they so tough? The two evil dragons stared at the tanks in astonishment. When their claws struck the Hell tank's armor plating, they felt as if they had scratched an indestructible wall. Their claws even stung from the impact. Even the engineers were stunned. They hadn't realized that the Hell tanks had such ridiculous defense. The evil dragon's claw attacks had only reduced each of the Hell tanks' durability by 2 points. In other words, the evil dragons would have to land 200 claw attacks to destroy the war weapons. Stop daydreaming. All tanks, ignore the Dark Witch's tower and prioritize the evil dragons. Shifeng suddenly shouted through the team chat. He was not surprised in the least that the evil dragons had failed to do any substantial damage. After all, the Hell tank's outer shell had been made with Titan Oregon. Normally, it was a material used to craft epic weapons and equipment. It wouldn't be easily destroyed by a Tier 3 archaic species. However, Shifeng was relieved that he had upgraded the Hell tank's engines, increasing the vehicle's defensive capabilities. Otherwise, those claw attacks would have reduced the tank's durability by at least 4 points. After hearing Shifeng's command, the engineers promptly targeted the two monstrous dragons. Without hesitation, the two tanks before the monsters fired their Hell cannons at the hovering evil dragons. 2 balls of crimson light then slammed into the evil dragons. Boom. The attacks, which had the power of a peak Tier 3 attack, sent the two monsters flying over 20 yards backward as the evil dragons cried out in pain. The two level 56, Tier 3 evil dragons did not possess as much HP as true Tier 3 archaic species. Each only had 28 million HP. A single hit from the Hell cannons had devoured over 3 million HP. While the evil dragons flew back, the two tanks' engineers followed up with their flame spears. 14 flame spears bit into the two evil dragons simultaneously, each dealing over -60,000 damage. After taking all 14 spears, the two monsters had lost nearly 1 million HP. The other 4 Hell tanks had reoriented themselves by this time, launching their own attacks. With how fast the Hell cannons' projectiles were, the evil dragons had no time to dodge the attack. They were only able to block and dodge the flame spears from the other 4 tanks. In the end, the two evil dragons had lost more than 1/3 of their total HPs after suffering a round of attacks from all 6 Hell cannons. To make matters worse, they were now injured, slightly affecting their combat powers. How is this possible? Dust Edge's eyes nearly fell from their sockets when he saw the massive dent in his dragon's HPs and the unscathed Hell tanks. Chapter 1875 is Zero Wings Guild Leader. Everyone was stunned as they watched the considerably injured evil dragons. Amazing. These Hell tanks are so powerful. Now that the evil dragons are injured, we have a chance of winning. If the guild makes the Hell tank available for exchange, I'll purchase one even if I have to go bankrupt. That thing is insane. Even a dragon is helpless against it. If I can use this Hell tank when grinding and questing in the fields, I won't have to fear other players at all. Zero Wings members cheered as they looked at the two collapsed evil dragons. When they had first seen the evil dragon's prowess, they had thought they were doomed, but they had learned that not only did the Hell tanks have the strength to overwhelm players, but the weapons could even contend with the horrific evil dragons. Normally, even a 100-man expert team would have to take the long way around a Tier 3 archaic species, yet these Hell tanks had allowed a small number of players to fight two such monsters. They would definitely be invincible in the fields if they had the assistance of a Hell tank. They were excited just thinking about it. Meanwhile, Veiled Spirit and the others, who watched from inside the Dark Witch's tower, wore gloomy expressions after the evil dragons had been beaten down. They had witnessed the strength of the evil dragon's strength personally. With those monsters' speed and destructive power, dealing with war weapons should be child's play. Yet, just how did Zero Wing get its hands on those tanks? Their defense is ridiculous. Envy and confusion swam in Veiled Spirit's gaze as she looked at the war weapons. She had never heard of such a war weapon in the game before. In her memory, war weapons had high destructive power but paper-thin defense, yet these tanks' defense was heaven-defying. The Hell tanks were godly weapons on a battlefield. Meanwhile, Zero Wing commanded such incredible weapons. You two, hurry and distance yourselves from those tanks. Their movement speed and reaction speed is no match for yours. As long as you fight from a distance, those tanks will be useless. Once Dust Edge recovered from his momentary shock, He commanded his 2 evil dragons to take advantage of the Hell Tank's weaknesses. At the end of the day, the Hell Tanks were simply machines that players drove. Players couldn't control the weapons as smoothly as their own bodies. However, the evil dragons were a different story. These players had full and nimble control of the beasts' bodies. In addition, the evil dragons could fly had higher movement speed than the Hell Tanks. With the evil dragons' capabilities, it was definitely possible to whittle down and destroy the Hell Tanks without taking any damage. At most, doing so would take some time. The 2 evil dragon players were peak experts. They had merely failed to react to the Hell Tank's attacks in time since the war weapons defense had taken them by surprise. Now that they had snapped out of their daze, they did as Dust Edge had instructed and put some distance between them and their targets. Although the strongest weapons of the evil dragons possessed were their breath and claw attacks, their ability to control wind and attack from a distance wasn't to be underestimated. When they flapped their wings, they could create storm blades that carried the power of Tier 3 attacks. Against the Hell Tanks that were incapable of flight and had delayed reactions, these storm blades would be an overwhelming advantage. They responded so quickly. Shi Feng clicked his tongue as the evil dragons moved to attack from a distance. It's a pity that the Hell Cannon's power is only at the peak of Tier 3 and can't inflict severe injuries to these evil dragons. Otherwise, that round of attacks would have ended the battle. Guild leader, what should we do now? One of the engineers who drove the Hell Tank Shi Feng occupied asked. At this rate, those monsters will whittle us down until we die. Since the evil dragons had put some distance between them and the Hell Tanks, they could now dodge and block the tank's flame spears easily. The evil dragons could also strike with their storm blades. By the time the drivers noticed the attacks, it would be too late to evade. Now that storm blades bombarded the Hell Tanks, they steadily lost durability. It was only a matter of time before the Hell Tanks ran out. It seems that we can't rely on the Hell Tanks to defeat these 2 monsters. After giving the matter some thought, Shi Feng said, "All tanks, group up and take up a defensive formation. Once your Hell Cannon's cooldown has ended, wait for my command to fire. We'll launch a concentrated assault on the evil dragons." The 6 Hell Tanks then circled, using their flame spears to prevent the evil dragon players from landing casual attacks. For a moment, the tank's decreasing durability slowed. However, as the seconds passed by, the vehicle's durability rapidly depleted under the dragon's frenzied assault. 386, 357, 324. I'm pretty surprised with Zero Wing. I didn't think it actually had such a trump card. It's no wonder why it dares to raid the Dark Witch's tower with such a small team. Unfortunately, Zero Wing's luck will end here. I want to see how long those tanks can last against my evil dragons, Dust Edge said, chuckling as he watched the evil dragons suppress the Hell Tanks. Meanwhile, the Zero Wing members watching from a distance were extremely nervous. Although they wanted to help, they were powerless in this situation. The engineers who drove the Hell Tanks sweated with anxiety. 15 seconds had never felt like such a long time. Just as the Hell Cannon's cooldown was about to end, Shi Feng leaped out of the Hell Tank, attracting the attention of everyone present. Guild leader? Zero Wing's members were stupefied as Shi Feng suddenly emerged from his Hell Tank. The Hell Tanks were under heavy fire by the evil dragons, and the shockwave from the creature's attacks was more than enough to kill players, yet Shi Feng had left the relative safety of his Hell Tank, exposing himself to the evil dragon's attacks. Are they trying to surrender now that they know they can't win? Dust Edge joked when he saw someone exit one of the tanks. The Shadow Claw members were similarly surprised. They could not understand why someone would leave the safety of the tank and put themselves in death's path. The evil dragons could even instant-kill a Tier 2 player. As everyone chatted about this reckless player quietly, Veiled Spirit watched with a somber expression. "Commander, has something happened?" A female cleric asked curiously when she noticed the ugly expression on Veiled Spirit's face. "Crap. That is Black Flame," Veiled Spirit shouted after getting a closer look at the figure. She hadn't been able to get a clear look at him since the evil dragon's storm blades had kicked up dirt and dust around the Hell Tanks, but after watching carefully with squinted eyes, she recognized the player. Veiled Spirit could never forget Black Flame's appearance. After all, he was the sole reason that Shadow Claw's ambush on Zero Wing had failed so miserably. When they heard their commander's comment, the other Shadow Claw members grew nervous. In their minds, Black Flame's name was synonymous with monster. The man's most memorable feat was his ability to contend with a mythic monster by himself. Although he had only stood against the monster for a short moment, It was a display of strength that countless experts dreamed of commanding. Oh, he is Black Flame. Hearing Veiled Spirit's warning, Dust Edge squinted his eyes as he looked at Shifeng. Currently, Shifeng stood beside a hell tank, yet the man was utterly unfazed by the evil dragon's frightening aura. It was as if the evil dragons didn't even exist to Shifeng. Sure enough, he really is extraordinary. Unfortunately, even if Zero Wings Guild leader is here, there is no changing the guild's fate here. You two get rid of him. It's time to put an end to Black Flame's undefeated legend. Upon receiving Dust Edge's command, the two evil dragon players licked their lips in anticipation and fanaticism as they watched Shifeng. He was the most famous individual in the Ur Empire. Almost no one throughout the Empire or Dark Soul didn't know the name Black Flame. When they had faced off against Black Flame during their previous battle with Zero Wing, their only thought had been of escape. However, this situation was different. They were now in possession of an evil dragon. They wielded strength that no player could hope to rival. Moreover, their superior life ratings elevated their senses to unprecedented levels. Both players had been some distance from the flowing water realm previously, but now not only had their combat powers reached that realm, but they were also nearly at the void realm. They were confident that they could easily defeat this legendary player. They were also extremely eager to fight Black Flame. Black Flame, hand over your life. The two evil dragon players flapped their wings and flew toward Shifeng, madness filling their eyes. Chapter 1876, Slaying Dragons in One Hit. Upon seeing the two evil dragon players flying toward Shifeng, the engineers controlling the hell tanks grew anxious. Protect the guild leader. Immediately, all 6 hell tanks fired their flame spears to hinder the movements of the two evil dragons. The 84 flame spears shot at the two evil dragons simultaneously. Normally, a Tier 2 player would have no choice but to wait for their death when faced with such an attack. However, dodging these attacks was no problem at all for the two Shadowclaw experts who possessed the physique of an evil dragon. Even if their huge bodies prevented them from evading all the flame spears, they could still rely on their claws to block the ones they couldn't dodge. Very quickly, the two evil dragon players weaved their way through the flame spears and arrived within 15 yards of Shifeng. They then simultaneously swung their massive paws at him, their silver claws tearing space apart as they sped toward Shifeng's head. Just as the two paws were about to hit Shifeng, the sacred sword in his hand suddenly flashed. In the next moment, a massive bolt of lightning cut the space before Shifeng in half, spatial tears appearing in its wake. This move was none other than Lightning Slash, the additional skill of Killing Ray. The moment their claws came into contact with the massive lightning bolt, the two evil dragon players felt as if a truck had just hit them. Their bodies went flying over a dozen yards before crashing heavily into the ground, cratering it. Impossible. Is he really a player? Dust Edge and the others gaped in shock when they saw this scene. They simply could not believe their eyes. Shifeng had actually sent 2 level 56, Tier 3 archaic species flying. The shock they felt from seeing this scene was akin to that from seeing an ant flipping over an elephant. The other dark players hiding within the Dark Witch's Tower were also rendered speechless at this scene. They didn't even know what had just happened. After all, everything was too quick. All they saw were the two evil dragons flying toward Shifeng, then a bright, blue flash coming from Shifeng. Before they realized it, the two evil dragons were already tumbling backward. Is he a monster? The two evil dragon players wore looks of horror as they stared at Shifeng. A single slap from them had managed to kill a Tier 2 expert. However, when they tried to do the same thing to Shifeng, not only did they fail to kill him, but they also actually lost in a competition of strength. However, what the two players did not know was that Shifeng's strength already rivaled a great lords of the same level. Meanwhile, after continuously producing the forging components for the hell tanks for the past few days, he was now a level 69, Tier 2 sword mastered 13 levels higher than the two evil dragon players. Lightning Slash also provided him with a 330% increase to his strength attribute. Although he still couldn't reach the standard of a mythic monster of the same level, his strength was more than enough to deal with level 56, Tier 3 archaic species. No, that's not right. He must have used a skill that increases his strength. He shouldn't be able to use such a skill often. As long as we work together to attack him, he'll definitely fall. That's right. How could a player possibly possess that much strength? He must have used a powerful skill. The two evil dragon players discussed quietly as they looked at Shifeng. Then they promptly split up and started circling to Shifeng's sides. A lot of powerful skills in God's domain provided a significant boost in attributes. Among these types of skills, berserk skills were the most common. However, there were also certain skills that exceeded one's imagination, such as taboo skills. Such skills were generally kept as a trump card and could not be used frequently. Since that was the case, all they needed to do was continue attacking Shifeng until he exhausted all of his skills. In any case, both of them had a maximum HP of 28 million. They were not afraid of fighting a battle of attrition against players at all. As for the attacks of the Hell tanks, they only needed to be wary of the Hell cannons. The flame spears posed no problems for them whatsoever. As the two evil dragon players closed in on Shifeng's sides and were about to launch another attack, Shifeng took out a magic scroll from his bag and activated it. Immediately, a golden-haired woman dressed in luxurious purple robes appeared before him. This woman was none other than Anna, Shifeng's personal guard. At this point she was already a level 85 Yin-Yang saint. As soon as Anna appeared, she lightly tapped the butt of her staff on the ground. Suddenly, a Yin-Yang barrier spread out with her as the center. Boom. The moment the two evil dragons collided with the Yin-Yang barrier, they felt a power rivaling Shifeng's lightning smash into their bodies. The two evil dragons went flying once again. Everyone fire at will. Shifeng commanded when he saw the evil dragons tumbling backward. After snapping out of their daze, the engineers simultaneously activated their respective Hell tanks, Hell cannon and flame spears. 6 crimson light balls and 84 flame spears flew at the fallen evil dragons right there and then. Boom, boom, boom. A series of explosions shook the battlefield. The HPs of the two evil dragons plummeted, falling below the 25% threshold. Feeling death approaching, the two evil dragon players automatically flapped their wings in an attempt to escape. Shifeng's and Anna's attacks might not pose a massive threat to them, but the attacks of the 6 Hell tanks were simply too fierce. If the Hell tanks landed another barrage on them, their lives would definitely be forfeit. You wish to run? Do you think you can so easily? Shifeng chuckled when he saw the two evil dragons trying to fly away. Right then, Anna finished chanting an incantation and now pointed her staff at the sky. In the next moment, pitch-black magic arrays appeared around the two evil dragons and shot out pitch-black spears. In the blink of an eye, the pitch-black spears stabbed into the bodies of the evil dragons, sealing their movements and sapping their strength. This move was none other than the new over-tier spell Anna had learned, Dark Lock. Due to Dark Lock, the two evil dragons were unable to move whatsoever. Their attributes had also decreased by 30%, which further reduced their already low HPs. On the verge of ordering the Hell tanks to fire the killing blow on these two evil dragons, Shifeng suddenly felt a pulse coming from his bag. What's going on? Just as Shifeng was about to inspect his bag to check which item was producing the humming noise he was hearing right now, a broken sword suddenly flew out of his bag. This broken sword was none other than the evil god's inheritance, the weapon that Shifeng dreaded using. System: faint traces of the evil god's power detected. Do you wish to use the evil god's inheritance to absorb this power? Does this sword want me to use it to kill these evil dragons? As Shifeng looked at the broken sword, he could tell that the evil god's inheritance was riveted by the dying evil dragons. He then clicked to use the weapon in order to see what would happen if he killed the evil dragons with the evil god's inheritance. After Shifeng made his selection, the abyssal blade suddenly vanished from his hand, and taking its place was the evil god's inheritance. At this moment, despite Shifeng not having sacrificed any of his attributes, he was actually able to utilize the full power of the evil god's inheritance, the weapon causing his basic attributes to skyrocket. Although the entire process seemed to take a lot of time, in reality, only 3 seconds had passed since the evil god's inheritance started humming until now. Tightening his grip on the evil god's inheritance, Shifeng activated Instant Strike and appeared above the heads of the two evil dragons. He then sent a slash at them. God Slayer. Suddenly, 5 pitch-black sword lights devoured the two evil dragon players. Seen from afar, it looked as if a gigantic pitch-black mouth had swallowed the two evil dragons whole. As the pitch-black sword lights faded away, the two evil dragon players' HPs instantly fell to 0. Their bodies petrified into 2 stone sculptures, which then disintegrated into dust particles that scattered on the wind. A short while later, all traces of the two evil dragons had thoroughly disappeared from the battlefield. Chapter 1877, Second Evil God's Mark. As the 5 pitch-black sword lights disappeared, the 2 evil dragons disintegrated into dust and scattered with the wind. The players spectating from the distant watchtower only reacted after the 2 evil dragons had vanished. He died. Is Black Flame really a player? Everyone had gasped when they saw Shifeng's sudden attack. Although they understood that the 2 evil dragons had very little HP left, each had held on to over 1,000,000 HP, yet Shifeng had slain both with a single attack. The man's damage was horrific. When the dark players in hiding saw this, they abandoned any thought of killing Shifeng. They now considered the idea laughable and ignorant. It was no exaggeration to say that no player at this stage of the game could survive Shifeng's last attack. Unless they used an invulnerability skill, they would die in an instant if they tried to take on the swordsman. Furthermore, Shifeng had summoned a level 85 personal guard to his side. Anna had only moved her staff slightly, yet she had repelled both evil dragons. With such a personal guard, getting close to Shifeng would be utterly impossible. As for the person responsible for the evil dragon's deaths, he finally snapped out of his daze. What a powerful weapon. Not only was the Godslayer skill was much stronger than before, but the weapon had also granted a much higher boost to his physique. He could feel his strength rival that of a Tier 3 player. Gaining a Tier 3 physique was a qualitative transformation for any player. Once players' physiques reached Tier 2, their 5 senses would sharpen, but when they wielded a Tier 3 physique, their natural response time would also improve. Originally, only talented players possessed the ability. Although ordinary people could improve their neural response time by training, there was a limit. In addition, the training process would be intensely arduous, and very few people would be able to endure the hardships that awaited them. However, when players' physique reached Tier 3 in God's domain, their neural response time would improve. Although the improvement was a measly 10% or so, when applied in a high-speed battle between Tier 3 existences, the effects would be significant. For example, if a player with a Tier 2 physique could execute 10 attacks in a fixed time, then a player with a Tier 3 physique and the same basic attributes could execute 11 attacks. This additional attack would allow the player with the Tier 3 physique the chance of landing an attack on their opponent. By relying on the advantage of 1 extra attack, the player with the Tier 3 physique could eventually achieve victory. This was also why reaching Tier 3 was so difficult in God's domain. In the past, Tier 3 had been a threshold to determine whether a player was a true expert or not. Meanwhile, despite the evil god's inheritance being a shadow of its former self, equipping it had nearly boosted Shifeng's physique to the Tier 3 standard. One could easily imagine how powerful the evil god's inheritance was. It definitely wasn't something an ordinary legendary weapon could compare to. After killing the 2 evil dragons, the sound of a system notification reached Shifeng's ears. System: Evil God's inheritance has accumulated sufficient life force and recovered the second evil god's mark. Activating the second evil god's mark's ability. As the system notification ended, the evil god's inheritance began to transform. The blurry divine runes that covered the broken sword became much clearer. The ambient mana also avoided the broken sword due to these divine runes. Naturally, the broken sword's attributes had changed significantly. Evil God's inheritance, one-handed sword. A treasured sword that the evil god had once used. However, the sword had been destroyed in a battle, shattered into 3 pieces. Although the evil god's treasured sword had been destroyed, the evil god's power within remains intact. As long as one gathers all 3 fragments, it is possible to restore the sword to its past glory. This piece is the sword's broken hilt. By permanently sacrificing 8 points of all attributes, the user may temporarily use the sword's power. Although this sword has been severely damaged, it can still exert 1/10 of its original power. First Evil God's Mark. Power absorption can increase strength by a maximum of 120%, stamina by 30%, and all resistances by 120%. Second Evil God's Mark, Soul Devourer. Can cause tremendous damage to the target's soul. When this fragment is within 3,000 yards of other fragments, the fragments will resonate. Drops upon death. Cannot be traded. Soul Devourer? How tyrannical. Shifeng looked down at the evil god's inheritance in his hand with slight astonishment. In God's domain, items that could attack a person's soul were exceedingly rare. After all, the soul was a creature's foundation. Even if a player's soul only received a small amount of damage, it could double the player's death penalty. Depending on the severity of the damage, the affected player might even be prevented from logging into God's domain for several days. If a player's soul were thoroughly destroyed, they'd be forced to start over. This was why any item that could target a soul was incredibly precious. Superpowers treated these items as ultimate trump cards to deal with peak experts. And Soul Devourer was such a frightening ability. Of course, this ability wasn't without a price. To use the evil god's inheritance, Shifeng still needed to sacrifice 8 points from every basic attribute. Although 8 points weren't cheap, if Shifeng could deal a devastating blow on his enemies, the price would be worth it to him. Following which, Shifeng stored the evil god's inheritance and returned his gaze to the Dark Witch's tower. He then commanded, "The evil dragons are dead. There is no longer anything in our path. All hell tanks, fire at the Dark Witch's tower. Destroy the teleportation device and the town's core magic array." As Shifeng gave the command, the 6 hell tanks advanced as one on the Dark Witch's tower, firing their weapons at the town's defensive magic array. Although the barrier could protect the town from intermediate Tier 3 attacks, the hell tanks dealt bonus damage to magic arrays and constructions. In addition, the hell cannon's attacks were at the peak of Tier 3. Under the bombardment, the defensive magic array's energy reserves visibly drained. "Commander, are we going to continue this fight?" Shadow Claw's members asked Veiled Spirit when they realized that the barrier was near to crumbling. Originally, they had been very confident of defeating Zero Wing. They were also eager to pay back the humiliation they had previously suffered. However, after witnessing the hell tanks and Shifeng's power, they shed the idea that they could annihilate this team from Zero Wing. "Retreat." Veiled Spirit growled in frustration, a hint of reluctance flashing in her eyes as she watched Shifeng's figure in the distance. There was no point in staying here any longer. They would only get themselves killed if they did. After all, they had no other means of dealing with the hell tanks. Although several hundred NPCs still guarded the Dark Witch's tower, the tank's defense was simply too high. Even the evil dragons, Great Lord-ranked archaic species, were incapable of damaging the vehicles. How could Tier 2 and Tier 3 NPCs fare any better? By the time Tier 3 NPCs destroyed the hell tanks, the latter would have long since destroyed the Dark Witch's tower's teleportation device and core magic array. When they heard Veiled Spirit's decision, Shadow Claw's members breathed a sigh of relief. They immediately retrieved return scrolls from their bags in an attempt to leave this dangerous place as soon as possible. If they tarried, they might get caught in the crossfire and lose their lives. Zero Wing. You may enjoy this victory, but the next time we meet, you'll be doomed. Dust Edge said, sneering as he tightened his grip on the 2 shattered, gray crystal balls in his hands. He had lost this time, but the legacy he had acquired was still incomplete. He still lacked a lot of resources. Hence, the evil dragon crystals he had created were not of sufficient quality. However, now that the evil god's temple had partnered with Blackwater and Dark Soul, he was confident that he could create even stronger evil dragons in the future. At that time, his evil dragons would fall as easily as they had today. Dust Edge then took out his own return scroll and teleported away from the Dark Witch's tower. When the remaining Dark players realized that the situation had taken a turn for the worst, they promptly fled the town. This allowed the hell tanks to enter the town unhindered after they destroyed the defensive magic array. Meanwhile, only the town's Tier 3 NPCs posed any threat to the hell tanks. However, with how few Tier 3 NPCs the town had, the hell tanks endured the attacks as they destroyed the town's teleportation device and core magic array, which in turn destroyed the Dark Witch's tower. Once the Dark Witch's tower's core magic array had been obliterated, every player in the Or Empire received a system notification. Or Empire Region System Announcement. Congratulations to Zero Wing for destroying the Dark Witch's tower. Rewarding 20,000 guild popularity and 1 basic teleportation device. The system announcement repeated 3 times, its content echoing in the minds of every player in the Or Empire. Chapter 1878, Dark Witch's Tower Destroyed. Or Empire, Ancient Rock City. A large number of evil beasts and evil demons was currently battering Zero Wing's defensive magic array. Meanwhile, Zero Wing's members were doing their best to wipe out the monsters attacking them. The 200 miniature ballistas were practically firing non-stop. All kinds of explosions constantly echoed throughout the battlefield outside Ancient Rock City. As for the 5 mythic evil beasts, they were fighting a heated battle with the 3 heavily injured divine magic dragons. The battle between these 8 monstrosities had destroyed the terrain around them. No other monsters or players could get within 300 yards of these 8 mythic monsters. Meanwhile, the players spectating from a distance felt their blood boil as they watched the spectacular battle before them. Amazing. This war is simply amazing. Ancient Rock City really does have a lot of evil beasts and evil demons. With the battle having lasted this long, more than 50,000 monsters must have died already, yet the number of monsters on the battlefield doesn't seem to have decreased in the slightest. It really makes you wonder what gave Zero Wing the courage to attack Ancient Rock City. Hey, Zero Wing is plenty amazing already. Can't you see how many monsters are attacking Zero Wing's army right now? If it were any other large guild in Zero Wing's place, they would have long since drowned in that sea of evil beasts and evil demons already. However, even until now, Zero Wing has yet to suffer a single casualty. Although Zero Wing hasn't suffered any casualties yet, the energy of its magic barrier should be close to depletion already. Once the barrier's energy runs out, Zero Wing's army will be doomed. After all, those evil beasts and evil demons are all level 60 and above, with plenty of level 70 plus great lords among them. Zero Wing's 100,000 players simply aren't enough to defeat all those monsters. Right now, the only thing I'm wondering is which will zero out first: Zero Wing's magic barrier or Ancient Rock City's monsters. Many of the spectating players had not expected the battle to escalate to such a point. The evil demons and evil beasts under Beast Emperor's command weren't existences that current players could go up against. However, by relying on its movement-type defensive magic array and miniature ballistas, Zero Wing had actually managed to fight Beast Emperor's forces to a standstill and even shattered Ancient Rock City's defensive magic array. These were feats that were beyond most superpowers. The dark players that were originally planning on ambushing Zero Wing's army in particular, were now standing at the sides and quietly observing the battle, not daring to set foot onto the battlefield. After all, the fusillade of 200 miniature ballistas was simply too powerful. Each volley of arrows could easily kill several hundred evil beasts and evil demons, let alone players. However, while the independent players were surprised by Zero Wing's performance and had their opinions toward the guild changed drastically, the spectating upper echelons of the various superpowers remained very calm. In fact, some even reveled in Zero Wing's current predicament. Zero Wing sure is tenacious. Unfortunately, the outcome of this battle has already been decided. No matter how Zero Wing struggles, nothing will change. That movement-type defensive magic array costs a lot of magic crystals to sustain. However, there are millions of evil demons and evil beasts inside Ancient Rock City. At the end of the day, Zero Wing is simply too immature to try and use Beast Emperor as a stepping stone to rise to power in the Ur Empire. With this, Zero Wing should also understand its limitations. If it still insists on monopolizing the profits of the Secret Stone Fortress, then we'll have no choice but to have Zero Wing disappear from the Ur Empire. However, Zero Wing has really given us a great surprise this time. I never thought that it could force Beast Emperor to use one of his trump cards. When we try to capture Ancient Rock City in the future, we'll have to think of a countermeasure for that attack first. The spectating upper echelons of the various superpowers sneered as they watched Zero Wing's members. Ordinary players might not know much about Zero Wing, but they did. They had done a thorough investigation of Zero Wing already. They even knew how many magic crystals it cost to use the movement-type defensive magic array each time. Hence, they were well aware that Zero Wing would not last very long against Beast Emperor. Although Zero Wing's performance had indeed surpassed their expectations, that still wasn't enough to convince them of Zero Wing's strength. While this level of strength was above average for a first-rate guild, to superpowers like them, be it the army of 100,000 elite and expert players or the 200 miniature ballistas, destroying these things would not be a problem if they really got serious. It was just that they did not wish to pay the enormous price for doing so, unless absolutely necessary. However, the situation right now was also slightly different. If it were simply removing Zero Wing from the Ur Empire, it was definitely doable. After all, there wasn't just one superpower putting pressure on Zero Wing, but multiple instead. After this battle, if Zero Wing still insisted on monopolizing the Secret Stone Fortress, then it would surely end up getting annihilated by the combined forces of the superpowers. At that time, each superpower would only have to pay a small price to get the deed done. In such a case, they definitely wouldn't hesitate to do so. Big Sis Rain, this is bad. Although Zero Wing is trying to prove itself qualified to monopolize the Secret Stone Fortress, according to the reports we've received thus far, several superpowers operating in the Ur Empire have already come to a secret agreement. As long as Zero Wing refuses to become a subordinate guild of one of them, they will remove Zero Wing from the Ur Empire. At that time, even if we try to intervene, the Great Pavilion Master will most likely stop us in fear of the alliance formed by those superpowers. Blue Phoenix, who was observing the battle at Ancient Rock City in person, reported to Phoenix Rain. According to Phoenix Rain's original plan, if Zero Wing really wasn't a match for Beast Emperor, then they would use the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's identity to back up Zero Wing. If they did that, the various superpowers might decide not to take action against Zero Wing. After all, individually, these superpowers couldn't take down the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion easily. Not to mention, if the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion gained access to the secret stone fortress via Zero Wing, the superpowers would have an even more difficult time dealing with the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion and Zero Wing. However, it was a different story if these several superpowers cooperated. Even the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion would not dare to go up against multiple superpowers simultaneously. Just what is Black Flame trying to do? Phoenix Rain could not help but frown upon hearing Blue Phoenix's words. Meanwhile, inside Ancient Rock City, Beast Emperor likewise received news about the alliance of superpowers. Good. Very good. Beast Emperor's brows arched up in joy when he read the message he just received. Zero Wing, this is your retribution for trying to use me as a stepping stone. I want to see just how you plan on surviving in the Ur Empire now. Although he wished to destroy Zero Wing personally, not having to expend a single troop to destroy Zero Wing was also a good thing for him. Just as Beast Emperor was about to have his subordinates send the two mythic evil demons into battle as well, to put a quick end to the battle, the sound of a system announcement suddenly entered his ears. Or Empire Region System Announcement. Congratulations to Zero Wing for destroying the Dark Witch's Tower. Rewarding 20,000 guild popularity and one basic teleportation device. The emotionless voice of the system caused Beast Emperor to fall into a daze. How is this possible? How could the Dark Witch's Tower possibly fall to Zero Wing? Beast Emperor instinctively refused to believe the system announcement. Although the Dark Witch's Tower wasn't an impenetrable fortress, it had several hundred NPC soldiers protecting it, including level 100 Tier 3 NPCs. The town was also well equipped with defensive structures. Most importantly, several thousand dark players resided there. Let alone a 1,000-man team, even an army of 50,000 players wouldn't be able to take down the Dark Witch's Tower. Moreover, he had even dispatched Dust Edge to defend the town. With the evil dragons that Dust Edge created using expert players, he could easily repel even a 1,000-man team of Tier 2 players. Meanwhile, Zero Wing didn't even have that many Tier 2 experts. At this moment, Beast Emperor wasn't the only person surprised by this outcome. Every player in the vicinity of Ancient Rock City was stunned by this announcement. Isn't Zero Wing attacking Ancient Rock City? How did the Dark Witch's Tower become the one captured instead? Did the system make a mistake? Isn't the Dark Witch's Tower a gathering point for dark players? I recall that there should be several hundred dark NPCs guarding it. How could it possibly be destroyed? What did Zero Wing do to the Dark Witch's Tower? The upper echelons of the various superpowers were filled with confusion when they received the system announcement. However, after snapping out of their daze, they promptly had their subordinates investigate into the matter. The Dark Witch's Tower might not be as sturdy as Ancient Rock City, but it was still a location that the superpowers were helpless against. Hence, they found it incredible that Zero Wing had managed to destroy the Dark Witch's Tower. After all, Zero Wing's main army was clearly attacking Ancient Rock City right now. How could Zero Wing have any extra forces to spare to attack the Dark Witch's Tower? Moreover, Zero Wing had even destroyed it. Chapter 1879, Qualifications to Establish a Foothold. The sudden news of the Dark Witch's Tower's destruction stupefied the dark players at Ancient Rock City. The Dark Witch's Tower is gone? What's going on? Pathless frowned when he received the system announcement. Shouldn't Shadow Claw be over there? The Dark Witch's Tower was an important stronghold for dark players like him. It was also the only teleportation point in the Ur Empire's southeastern region, serving as an important foundation for dark players to take control of this region. Losing the Dark Witch's Tower meant that dark players would have much more difficulty operating in the Empire's southeastern region in the future. After all, with how large the Ur Empire was, traveling around the Empire without teleportation points was very inconvenient. Hence, Dark Soul and the other dark powers normally station some experts to guard the Dark Witch's tower. After hearing that Zero Wing had sent a 1,000-man team toward the town, Pathless had even made a point to instruct Veiled Spirit to bring some of Shadow Claw's experts over. Despite that, he was actually being told that the Dark Witch's tower was no more. At this moment, Pathless felt as if the system was playing a joke on him. Veiled Spirit had brought 300 experts with her to the Dark Witch's tower. Even if she didn't receive any help from the other dark players there, with the town's defensive structures and NPCs, she could easily fend off a team of 1,000 players. Pathless immediately contacted Veiled Spirit to find out what exactly had happened at the Dark Witch's tower. With the loss of the Dark Witch's tower, Dark Soul would have a much more difficult time dealing with Zero Wing's Silverwing town. This unexpected development might even severely affect the Alliance's plans. The various superpowers also launched their own investigations into this matter, some even offering to purchase the relevant information at high prices. They were very curious to find out just how Zero Wing had destroyed the gathering point that they had been helpless to do anything against all this time. The lucrative offers very quickly attracted the attention of the dark players that had fled the Dark Witch's tower. They promptly sold the battle videos they recorded to the superpowers. After watching the battle at the Dark Witch's tower, the superpowers were thoroughly rendered speechless. Although the battle at the Dark Witch's tower was not as stirring as the one at Ancient Rock City, it displayed Zero Wing's frightening combat power and potential. 6 Hell Tanks had actually managed to slaughter 2,000 dark players without taking any damage. The destructive power the Hell Tanks possessed could practically rival that of the Magic Tower. Meanwhile, the battle against the evil dragons afterward was even more jaw-dropping. Despite being Tier 3 archaic species, the 2 evil dragons had actually failed to inflict any noticeable damage on the Hell Tanks. Even for the various superpowers, this was the first time they had heard of or seen such a frightening war weapon. The Hell Tank boasted both heaven-defying destructive power and defensive capabilities, which would make it an absolute nightmare on a battlefield. Of course, dealing with the Hell Tanks wasn't exactly impossible, only the cost would be exorbitant. For example, Tier 4 large-scale destruction magic scrolls. Attacks at the Tier 4 standard would definitely be effective against the Hell Tanks. However, the question was, how effective would they be? How many of such magic scrolls would be needed to destroy a Hell Tank? Even superpowers like themselves had great difficulty getting their hands on Tier 4 magic scrolls, not to mention Tier 4 large-scale destruction magic scrolls. These things were treated as their guild's foundations. They were tools that should not be used casually. Moreover, the most frightening aspect about the Hell Tank was that, aside from being useful in siege battles, it would also be effective in guerrilla warfare. 6 Hell Tanks could effortlessly slaughter over 2,000 expert players. In the future, when Zero Wing came across ambushes involving hundreds or thousands of players, it could deploy just 1 Hell Tank to fend off these ambushes. With this, trying to whittle down Zero Wing's strength by ambushing its members would become much more difficult. As for conducting ambushes on the scale of parties or small teams, such attacks would simply be a waste of time and resources, as they would not cause Zero Wing any substantial damage. So, this is the trump card Black Flame has kept hidden? Truly amazing. Blue Phoenix was filled with envy after she finished watching the video of the battle at the Dark Witch's tower. The 6 Hell Tanks were akin to 6 mobile magic towers. It was no wonder Zero Wing did not need any direct assistance from the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion. One could say that, with these Hell Tanks, Zero Wing had the qualifications to establish a foothold in the Ur Empire. Although the various superpowers operating in the Ur Empire had banded together, there was still a limit to the number of forces each superpower was willing to dispatch. They would not send their main armies to fight Zero Wing in a frontal confrontation. After all, Silverwing Town's defenses were no laughing matter. Even if they could capture the town, the price of doing so was not one that the various superpowers were willing to pay. At best, they would dispatch some members to conduct guerrilla warfare against Zero Wing or economic wars. The appearance of the Hell Tanks threw a wrench into the various superpowers' plan of dealing with Zero Wing using guerrilla warfare. As for economic warfare, that was even more impossible. Zero Wing possessed Silverwing Town, Stone Forest Town, and Zero Wing City. So long as the safety of these 3 money-printing machines remained unthreatened, Zero Wing would not lack for income. Now that the various superpowers no longer had any means of dealing with Zero Wing without paying a huge cost, they would naturally give up on targeting Zero Wing altogether. After all, the superpowers were not actually friendly with each other. Every one of them had their own agenda. Unless they bore some deep-seated hatred for Zero Wing, or one of these superpowers lost their mind, none of them would persecute Zero Wing at all costs. Damn it! How did Zero Wing get these tanks? Nine Dragons Emperor frowned as he read the report in his hands. Immediately have someone look into this. Find out how Zero Wing managed to obtain these tanks regardless of the cost. He felt true jealousy toward Zero Wing at this point. When he looked at the Hell tanks, it was as if the doors to a whole new world opened up to him. While expert players were important, tanks could also play a huge role in future struggles in God's domain. Understood. Martial Dragon nodded before turning around to leave. In reality, Nine Dragons Emperor wasn't alone in having such thoughts. Every major power that had watched the battle at the Dark Witch's Tower basically had the same thought as well. The appearance of the Hell tank signaled the end of the era of numerical strength. The upper echelons of every major power had immediately ordered their subordinates to conduct a thorough investigation into the Hell tank. Meanwhile, over at Ancient Rock City, Zero Wing's members grew ecstatic after seeing the system announcement. They never thought that their guild had actually managed to destroy a dark gathering point without anybody finding out about it prior to succeeding. The Dark Witch's Tower was a dark gathering point that even the various superpowers were helpless against. Moreover, now that the Dark Witch's Tower was no more, they would have a much easier time operating in the vicinity of Silverwing Town. The guild leader did it? Aqua Rose could not help but smile when she saw the system notifications. Since that is the case, start retreating. With the destruction of the Dark Witch's Tower, Blackwater and Beast Emperor had lost a crucial tool against Zero Wing. Without the threat of the Dark players, Silverwing Town's development would recover to its peak. After including the benefits offered by the Secret Stone Fortress, Zero Wing would definitely be able to compete against Blackwater in the Ur Empire. After Aqua Rose gave the command to retreat, Zero Wing's members started slowly withdrawing from the battlefield. Boss, Zero Wing seems to be retreating. Should we give chase? Wind Hunter asked in a quiet tone. Chapter 1880 You Descend. Hearing Wind Hunter's question, Beast Emperor could not help but turn towards the Blackwater members and Dark players watching the battle outside of the city. When Zero Wing had begun its retreat, a hunger to take action swept through the two groups of players. Although the movement-type defensive magic array protected Zero Wing's army, it could only withstand up to Tier 3 attacks. Tier 4 attacks would exceed the magic array's tolerance and shatter the array. Although the 3 divine magic dragons had the 5 mythic evil beasts tied up right now, he still had 2 mythic evil demons on reserve. Following which, Beast Emperor gazed at the many destroyed buildings behind him with a cold glint flashing in his eyes. He felt his heart ache as he looked at the destroyed buildings. Although the buildings had only been basic constructions, they were still important for nurturing evil beasts and evil demons. It would cost him a lot of evil gods' temple contribution points to repair them all. Meanwhile, Zero Wing, the cause of this destruction, wanted to get away from the battle without suffering a single casualty. Zero Wing. First, you used me as a diversion to attack the Dark Witch's Tower, and now you want to disengage safely. Do you think you own this place? Beast Emperor sneered at Aqua Rose and the others' retreating figures. Mobilize all mythic and Grand Lord ranked evil demons. Send in Elder Whales. I want to teach Black Flame how foolish his decision was to send an army up against Ancient Rock City. If he allowed Zero Wing City to leave Ancient Rock City unscathed after this incident, both he and the evil god's temple would become a laughingstock throughout the Ur Empire. He could not allow that to happen. Not only did he intend to display the might of the evil god's temple before Zero Wing, but before every major power watching this battle as well. Are we really going to mobilize Elder Whales? Wind Hunter gasped when he heard Beast Emperor's command. He hadn't thought that Beast Emperor would involve Der Whales, the branch temple's Tier 4 NPC in Ancient Rock City. Elder Whales was the strongest trump card Ancient Rock City had at the moment. They had also gone through great lengths to secure a single opportunity to request the NPC's assistance. Initially, they had planned to save the opportunity for their assault on Silverwing Town. He had never expected Beast Emperor to use it here. Of course, I want a Black Flame to learn how foolish it was to send a measly army of 100,000 players to attack my city. If we destroy Zero Wing's army here, the guild's hold over the secret stone fortress will crumble, Beast Emperor said, a hint of madness in his eyes. Although mobilizing Elder Whales now would ruin his original plans, destroying 100,000 of Zero Wing's elite and expert players would land a heavy blow to the enemy guild. This defeat might even be enough to encourage the various superpowers to strike against Zero Wing. Understood. Windhunter said, clearly eager. He couldn't wait to see the enemy's expressions when they were dragged to the pits of hell only moments after celebrating a victory. Meanwhile, Blackwater's members quietly observed the battle outside of Ancient Rock City from a safe distance. Commander Scar, Zero Wing has begun its retreat. When are we going to make our move? Finally. This is our Heavenly Eagle Legion's chance to show the Vice Guild leader our worth. I don't think there's a need to wait until both sides are severely injured. We can simply charge in and slaughter Zero Wing's members. Isn't it just a defensive magic array? That Beast Emperor really is useless. He still hasn't destroyed it. The 20-plus players behind Snow Scar, a Tier 2 Berserker, were growing impatient after such a long wait. If Phoenix Rain were present, she would have been astonished to see these players. Not only were they all level 56-plus Tier 2 players, but they were also famous experts in the Iron Empire. Originally, they had either been known independent players or top-ranked experts from first-rate guilds. Some were even dark players. Overall, everyone in the Iron Empire was familiar with these players. They all wielded a level of power that even first-rate guilds were helpless against. Some of them even had special means that could cause the various superpowers headaches. Yet these 20-plus players had gathered here. Moreover, they had joined Blackwater. Why wouldn't this be shocking? Let's wait for a bit. Ancient Rock City should make its move soon. If the situation hasn't changed in the next few minutes, it won't be too late for us to attack, Snow Scar said, smiling at the restless group of players around him. Honestly, even he felt somewhat powerless against this group. These people usually acted like lawless criminals in the Iron Empire since so few players weren't capable of challenging them. A few of these players even had the strength to rival him. If they decided to rampage, he wasn't confident that he could stop them. Only Xuan Wuxia was capable of truly controlling these madmen. However, she was also the reason that this bunch had joined the Heavenly Eagle Legion. After hearing Snow Scar's decision, the other Heavenly Eagle Legion members fell silent, returning their attention to Zero Wing's army. As Zero Wing's army organized its retreat from the battlefield, over a dozen figures flew out of Ancient Rock City. Upon seeing these figures, the watching crowd, all of whom had assumed that the battle had reached its end, were stupefied. What's going on? Why is a Tier 4 NPC here? There's not just the Tier 4 NPC. 2 mythic evil demons have joined the battle as well. I knew Beast Emperor wouldn't let Zero Wing escape. This is going to be interesting. Beast Emperor is too ruthless. Zero Wing will suffer a massive loss this time. Beast Emperor still had so much power hidden? The spectating crowd was stunned as they watched the dozen or so figures rapidly approach Zero Wing's force. Even the spectating superpowers were astonished. Although there were only a dozen or so new arrivals, the group had enough combat power to capture a guild town. After a moment of silence, Wales, a level 80 Tier 4 NPC, appeared above Zero Wing's army. He then pointed his staff at the sky above him. Offenders of the evil god, the punishment for your crimes is death. Suddenly, countless small magic arrays appeared in the sky before silvery gray arrows descended like a storm. Tier 4 large-scale destruction spell, Death's Twilight. As the silver arrows rained down, the defensive magic array's energy reserves rapidly depleted. After a short moment, the defensive magic array's energy reserves were empty. Aqua Rose hadn't even had time to replenish the reserves before the magic array shattered. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the 2 level 80 mythic evil demons and the dozen or so Grand Lord ranked evil demons flew towards Zero Wing's army. Beast Emperor is quite ruthless. We merely destroyed Ancient Rock City's defensive magic array. Does he really need to send a Tier 4 NPC after us? Blackie felt an intense pressure weigh down on him as he looked up at Wales. The man's aura was even stronger than that of a Tier 4 monster, and despite standing so far away from the NPC, Blackie felt stifled. Sure enough, guild leader's guess had been correct. Beast Emperor won't let us get away so easily. Aqua Rose looked at Wales with a bitter smile. She had to admit that Beast Emperor was a formidable foe. There was a reason that the various superpowers had been powerless against Ancient Rock City. Aside from the large number of evil beasts and evil demons under his command, Beast Emperor also had so many powerful trump cards. Elder Whales. Please punish these offenders and transform them into nutrients for our evil demon army. Wind Hunter said, laughing as he pointed at Zero Wing's army. 100,000 elite and expert players. The corpses of these players would elevate the evil god's temple's evil demon army to a whole new level. They'd be able to create far more mythic evil demons in the future. As soon as Wind Hunter finished speaking, whales began to chant an incantation. Meanwhile, the mythic and Grand Lord-ranked evil demons charged for the movement-type defensive magic array in an attempt to destroy the barrier around Zero Wing's army, preventing it from erecting another. It seems that there's no other way. Since he won't let us leave, we'll drag him to hell with us. Aqua Rose sighed. She then pulled an ancient magic scroll and a beautiful crystal from her bag. This magic scroll was none other than the Tier 4 continuous use magic scroll, Vulcan's Sigh. As for the beautiful crystal, it was an elemental source Melancholic Smile had acquired with great difficulty after scouring through the various kingdoms and empires. Source of blazing fire. Vulcan's kin descend. Chapter 1881 E-Disaster Incarnate. When Aqua Rose activated Vulcan's Sigh, which was powered by the source of blazing fire, darkness suddenly flooded the sky above the battlefield, following which a gigantic spatial tear opened up in the sky. Meanwhile, at this moment, the players and the monsters on the battlefield had frozen in their tracks, gazing at the black hole in the sky in fear. What did she do? Wind Hunter, who currently stood on ancient Rock City's city wall, shuddered in fear when he saw the hill-sized eyeball inside the black hole. Right now he could clearly feel death looming over him. Let alone Wind Hunter, even the Tier 4 NPC whales turned pale when he sensed the dreadful aura coming from the gigantic eyeball. He couldn't even move his body right now. As the aura intensified, the black hole spat out flaming meteors. In the blink of an eye, the flaming meteors illuminated the sky brightly. Before anyone could react, the flaming meteors descended on the evil beast and evil demon army, the impact causing countless explosions and screams of agony to resound in the battlefield. At this moment, it was as if Armageddon had arrived as the entire battlefield shook. Among the evil beasts and evil demons caught within the range of the flaming meteors, those at the Lord rank and below were killed instantly. Meanwhile, the meteor shower covered a 700-yard radius at the very minimum. By the time the meteor shower ended, the terrain of the battlefield had undergone an earth-shattering transformation. Aside from the monsters at the Great Lord rank and above, everything else caught within the AoE of Vulcan's Sigh was now ashes. Even the two mythic evil demons, which were unfortunate enough to be in the attack's AoE, had fallen into a heavily injured state, their combat power plummeting. In just one attack, more than 5,000 evil beasts and evil demons were killed. The destructive power of Vulcan's Sigh stupefied everyone on the battlefield. The dark players that were originally planning on charging into battle all gulped audibly, their backs growing cold as they watched this scene play out before them. That was close. Fortunately, we didn't charge into battle too quickly. I never thought that Zero Wing would actually have such a trump card hidden as well. Had we charged into battle, we probably would have died to this large-scale destruction spell. However, Zero Wing is already at the end of its tether. The number of evil beasts and evil demons killed is nothing to Beast Emperor. How does Zero Wing plan on repelling Beast Emperor's remaining forces? I refuse to believe that Zero Wing still has another magic scroll like that. I guess you're right. Once Zero Wing's members get scattered by the evil beasts, it'll be our turn to make a move. Zero Wing's members are all walking sacks of money. We'll be able to make a fortune if we manage to kill a few of them. Although everyone was shocked by the might of Vulcan's Sigh, none of them was an ordinary player. They understood that such a powerful large-scale destruction spell could be used only once. This was merely Zero Wing's last gasp before it got annihilated. It wouldn't stop Beast Emperor's forces from giving chase. At this moment, Snow Scar, who was watching the battle from a short distance away, unsheathed the two sabers he carried in his bag and commanded, "Prepare to move out." This was the moment he had been waiting for. When cornered, even a rat would bite back at the cat, not to mention a guild like Zero Wing. Meanwhile, now that Zero Wing's last-ditch defense was over, it was the perfect opportunity for them to take action. At Snow Scar's words, the eyes of Blackwater's members glowed with excitement and anticipation. The experts of the Heavenly Eagle Legion in particular, had long since been dying to make a move. If not for Snow Scar holding them back, they would have charged at Zero Wing's army already. However, just as the Blackwater members and Dark players were preparing to rush down on Zero Wings members, a deafening roar suddenly came from the fiery plains created by the meteor shower. Following the first roar, more roars shook the battlefield one after another. Then, the meteors that landed on the battlefield started transforming. The flames surrounding the meteors grew considerably. As for the meteors themselves, they took on a humanoid form. In the blink of an eye, over 500 flaming giants appeared on the battlefield. Even the weakest among these flame giants was a level 75 Great Lord that was 10 meters tall. Meanwhile, the majority of the flame giants on the battlefield were 20-meter-tall Grand Lords. There were also 4 60-meter-tall mythic flame giants. These 4 mythic flame giants looked like 4 flaming mountains as they stood on the battlefield. Everywhere these mythic flame giants passed became a sea of flames. Lava also flowed down from their bodies continuously, turning the area within 100 yards of the mythic flame giants into a lava field. Any evil beasts and evil demons caught within this lava field got burned and lost chunks of HP over time. After taking shape, these flame giants slaughtered the evil beasts and evil demons before them and charged straight towards Ancient Rock City. The level 83 mythic flame giants in particular were simply unstoppable, sending even the mythic evil beasts flying with a single slap. Meanwhile, the Lord-ranked evil beasts caught within the lava fields formed by the mythic flame giants lost HP at a rate visible to the naked eye. In the blink of an eye, several hundred evil beasts and evil demons had been killed. The battlefield had been turned into a sea of flames as well. It was no exaggeration to say that this legion of flame giants was disaster incarnate. Damn it! Stop them. Quick! We must not let them enter the city. Beast Emperor shouted, his complexion turning deathly pale when he saw the flame giants charging toward Ancient Rock City. The flame giants' bodies were massive. If they entered Ancient Rock City, the destruction they would cause would be unimaginable. This was especially true for the mythic flame giants. Their entry would spell disaster for the city. Damn it! Zero Wing, just you wait. The evil god's temple will flatten you sooner or later. Wind Hunter bellowed as he glared at Zero Wing's army. Gnashing his teeth, he promptly controlled all his evil demons and evil beasts to deal with the flame giants. Ancient Rock City was the evil god's temple's foothold in the Ur Empire. They could not afford to lose it no matter what. Although he did not think that the Flame Giant Legion could destroy the entire city, even partial destruction was not a loss they could afford. Following which, under Wind Hunter's command, Whales and the 2 mythic evil demons moved to hinder the mythic flame giants. As for the other evil beasts and evil demons, Wind Hunter tasked them with dealing with the other flame giants. The number of monsters targeting Zero Wings members decreased drastically. Using this opportunity, Aqua Rose activated the movement-type defensive magic array once again. Immediately after, she had the army beat a hasty retreat. At the same time, she also had Flying Shadow and the others recall the divine magic dragons to support the army's withdrawal. Right now, the Flame Giant Legion was more than enough to handle the front line. This sudden development gave the players seeking to attack Zero Wings members pause. With the 3 divine magic dragons guarding Zero Wings' army, no player could poke their nose into this battle. Moreover, Zero Wings' defensive magic array was up again. There were also the 200 miniature ballistas continuously firing exploding arrows. We're retreating, Snow Scar said, sighing as he sent a glance at Zero Wings' receding army. But the other members of the Heavenly Eagle Legion felt unreconciled as they looked at Snow Scar. Do you think you can handle those 3 divine magic dragons? Snow Scar asked as he eyed the 20-plus players behind him. They might be able to do something about the defensive magic array and 200 miniature ballistas, but they would be helpless against the 3 divine magic dragons. Although the divine magic dragons were heavily injured, as they were controlled by players, the combat power they possessed was still above that of ordinary mythic monsters. Not to mention with the divine magic dragon's basic attributes, all they needed was 1 hit to kill current players. If we use our trump card, what will those 3 divine magic dragons amount to? A white-clad Tier 2 summoner argued. Trump card? Are you all going to expose our Heavenly Eagle Legion's greatest secret without the Vice Guild leader's permission? Snow Scar asked as he shot a cold glare at the Tier 2 summoner. Everyone present promptly fell silent. Relax. You'll have plenty of opportunities to perform in the future. Not to mention we got to see Zero Wings' trump cards this time. A guild that has its trump cards exposed is no different from a beast that has lost its claws and fangs. Zero Wing is no longer a threat to us, Snow Scar said, a faint smile appearing on his face as he eyed the distant Zero Wing army. When Zero Wing's army completed its retreat from the battlefield, the battle at Ancient Rock City had also come to an end. Although Zero Wing had failed to capture Ancient Rock City, it had managed to destroy the city's defensive magic array and retreat entirely unscathed. Most importantly, Zero Wing had also destroyed the Dark Witch's Tower, an important gathering point for dark players in the Ur Empire. After the battle ended, news of it spread like crazy to the kingdoms and empires neighboring the Ur Empire. Chapter 1882, Everyone's Considerations. Dark Knight Empire, Dark Knight City. Many players roamed along the city's streets. Players visiting the city for the first time were awed by its prosperity. As one explored the busy streets, they'd encounter level 55 or above players who wore level 50 secret silver equipment. Tier 2 experts were also relatively common. Meanwhile, Starlink's guild residence sat at the heart of the city. It was one of the most eye-catching sights within the city, and there was always a long line of players seeking to join the guild outside its entrance. Why does it feel like more players have applied to join Starlink recently? I've even heard rumors that players from outside of the Dark Knight Empire have come to join Starlink. That's only natural. I've heard that Starlink has acquired a magic crystal vein, so the guild no longer lacks magic crystals. Moreover, the guild recently cleared a path to the Sea of Trees and can now travel to the area. The Sea of Trees? Are you talking about the Dark Knight Empire's rumored Dream City? Of course. What else would I be talking about? I've heard that the Sea of Trees is a wonderful place, protected by the 6 great primordial elf kings. It also has a passage that allows you to complete your promotion to Tier 2. You can actually skip the regular Tier 2 promotion quest. The passage is also easier than the normal promotion quest, although once you complete the trial, you don't get one of the main Tier 2 classes, but a special Tier 2 class. A special Tier 2 class. That's right. It's a semi-support class called Traveling Bard. The class is a combination of the Berserker, Elementalist, Cleric and Oracle classes. How awesome! You can actually skip the normal Tier 2 promotion quest. The Tier 2 promotion quests are so difficult that you're not guaranteed to pass if even with the full support of a large guild. I wonder when we'll get to visit the Sea of Trees. Even if I can't complete my normal Tier 2 promotion quest, becoming a Tier 2 Traveling Bard isn't a bad idea. At the very least, I'll be much stronger than a Tier 1 Berserker. Keep dreaming. That's the Sea of Trees we're talking about. How could it be so easy to visit? Only Starlink, the force responsible for opening the path to the city, can lead a large number of players to it. Why do you think experts from other countries are coming to join Starlink? Everyone's trying to get into the Sea of Trees through the guild. The independent players who loitered in the central district chatted as they watched the long line of players outside of Starlink's residence. Although they too wished to join the guild, Starlink was a large enough guild that it could even contend with the various super first-rate guilds. Its recruitment requirements were intensely strict. Not just anyone could join. Meanwhile, a dozen or so Tier 2 players had gathered in the guild leader's office in Starlink's residence. Damn that unyielding soul. They actually secured the first clear of a large-scale Hell Mode team dungeon before us and promoted their guild to 3-star. Lu Xinglua frowned as he glared at the people before him. How did this happen? We've clearly held the lead. How did Unyielding Soul get the first clear instead? Guild Leader, based on our investigations, Unyielding Soul has acquired a large number of powerful weapons and tools to increase their raid team's combat power significantly. Those items are the reason that they secured the first clear, Don Webb, who is now a level 57 Tier 2 Elementalist, explained. Powerful weapons? How is that possible? The situation left Lu Xinglua confused. Despite its current dire straits, Unyielding Soul was still a super first-rate guild. Its main force should have already wielded the best equipment in God's domain. Even if Unyielding Soul borrowed equipment from other guilds, it shouldn't be able to increase its raid team's combat power by such a large margin. It's true. According to our spies, the guild has acquired a large collection of level 55 dark gold weapons, Don Webb said as he sent Lu Xinglua the information on the weapons. Although these level 55 dark gold weapons are inferior to most level 55 dark gold weapons, they are still more powerful than level 50 dark gold weapons. Level 55 dark gold weapons? How did they get their hands on these? Not even super guilds have such an armory. There's no way anybody would be willing to sell a large batch of these weapons, Lu Xinghua said in surprise. Our spies have confirmed that the weapons came from Zero Wing. Zero Wing must have some special channel that allows it to collect such items, Dawn Webb explained. I've already had someone investigate the guild, but Zero Wing has kept a tight lid on this matter. So far we have failed to discover the weapon's origin. However, if I were to guess, it is highly likely that Zero Wing's forgers crafted the items. Even the various superpowers are struggling to raid level 50 team dungeons. Other than special quests or high-level field bosses, it is almost impossible for players to acquire level 55 dark gold weapons right now. Furthermore, Zero Wing sold the weapons to Unyielding Soul in bulk. It is very likely that Zero Wing's forgers have managed to create a level 55 dark gold weapon by luck or found the forging designs, mass-producing the weapons. Zero Wing? Lu Xinghua's expression darkened when he heard the name. I've heard that Zero Wing just launched a sudden attack against Ancient Rock City. What was the battle's outcome? Zero Wing had already dared to disobey him. Now the guild had assisted Unyielding Soul, his guild's rival. Due to the assistance, Unyielding Soul had recovered its momentum and become an even greater thorn in his side. Zero Wing has failed, Dawn Webb said softly after giving the matter some thought. I know that. That's Beast Emperor we're talking about. How could that old bastard be so easy to defeat? The old bastard was even lucky enough to acquire a legacy from the evil god's temple, Lu Xinghua said, nodding. I want to know how severe Zero Wing's losses were. There were none. After failing to capture Ancient Rock City, Zero Wing used a powerful magic scroll to stop Beast Emperor's army before retreating from the battlefield, Dawn Webb explained. Although Zero Wing failed to capture Ancient Rock City, however, the guild did destroy the Dark Witch's Tower, one of the Dark Player's teleportation points in the Ur Empire. How? Lu Xinghua's eyes widened with shock. Finding this revelation somewhat unbelievable, he continued, I thought Dark Soul guarded the town. Although he did not know exactly how powerful the Dark Witch's Tower was, even superpowers would have to pay a high price to destroy it since it was protected by high-level NPCs, much less a guild like Zero Wing. Moreover, Zero Wing had been engaged in a battle against Ancient Rock City while it had attacked the Dark Witch's Tower. That's correct. During the battle with the Dark Witch's Tower, Zero Wing revealed war weapons that no one has seen in the game before. This weapon operates like a mobile magic tower. It even has extremely high defense. The attack on the Dark Witch's Tower succeeded due to these weapons. All of the various superpowers are looking into it to find a way to acquire the weapons for themselves, Dawn Webb reported, nodding. He then forwarded the Dark Witch's Tower's battle video to Lu Xinghua. The ability to produce level 55 dark gold weapons, and now this? Zero Wing is unexpectedly capable. After Lu Xinghua watched the video, his lips curled into a smile as he said, very good. I had simply planned to destroy Zero Wing, but it seems that the guild still has some value. Change of plans. Notify our subordinates to bring me these items. What about the Sea of Trees? We've gone to great lengths to acquire the 8 keys from the Thorn Fortress. Are we going to give up now that we're so close to the final struggle? Dawn Webb asked hurriedly. Of course not. We'll deal with the Sea of Trees first, then we'll take care of Zero Wing, Lu Xinghua said. As he looked at the hell tanks on his screen, a hint of greed flashed in his eyes. All right, go, see to the necessary preparations. Understood. Dawn Webb nodded. He then led his men out of the office. Meanwhile in Silverwing Town, the return of Zero Wing's army caused a huge commotion in the town. After all, the battle's outcome had been striking. Although Zero Wing had failed to take down Ancient Rock City, the Dark Witch's Tower's destruction ensured that dark players would no longer pose a threat to Silverwing Town. Including the guild's occupation of the secret stone fortress, Zero Wing had secured the Ur Empire's southeastern region. No force would be able to hinder the guild's members now. With the rich leveling resources in the Ur Empire, Zero Wing's development speed would skyrocket. For a time, independent players from other countries traveled to Silverwing Town in hopes of joining Zero Wing. Many among them were expert players. Guild leader, the various superpowers representatives have left. They all expressed their congratulations on garrisoning in the secret stone fortress, Aqua Rose said, smiling at Shifeng as he organized and inspected the loot he had acquired from the Dark Witch's Tower. However, Hellfiend from King's Return wore a particularly grudging look when he left. You should have seen how funny it was. It seems that they intend to give up on pressuring our guild. Shifeng nodded. The outcome didn't surprise him. Now that the potential losses outweighed the gains, it was only natural that the various superpowers gave up on targeting Zero Wing. Right, Unyielding Heart has also come to meet you. He has brought a few people with him this time. He says that he has a huge business proposition for you, Aqua Rose said. They're currently waiting in the second floor's VIP reception room. Would you like to meet with them now? A business proposition? Alright, let's head over and see what they have to say. Shifeng was relatively curious about Unyielding Heart's sudden visit. He and Aqua Rose then left the guild warehouse and headed for the second floor VIP reception room. Chapter 1883, Set Equipment of Astronomical Value. Four people sat in the second floor VIP reception room in Zero Wing's guild residence. When Shifeng and Aqua Rose entered, these four people shifted their gazes toward the door. Sorry for the long wait, Shifeng said. He was already acquainted with two of the four players, Unyielding Heart and Mu Lingsha. Shifeng also recognized the other two. They had been experts that ever-large guild in God's domain had known about during his previous life. One of these two was a level 57 Tier 2 elementalist called Long Soul, while the other was a level 57 Tier 2 Guardian Knight called Hunting Blade. In the past, Long Soul had also been known as the Crimson Wizard, whereas Hunting Blade had been known as the Iron Giant. Although neither had ranked on the God's Domain's experts list in the past, the Secret Pavilion had given them official titles. They hadn't ranked simply because they hadn't wanted to. Every superpower had their own secrets, and none of them would display every expert they had. Hence, under pressure from the various superpowers, the Secret Pavilion hadn't included every expert on the God's Domain experts list. However, the Secret Pavilion had still provided a brief description of some of these experts. All of the experts that had earned a title had striking battle records. Although Long Soul and Hunting Blade hadn't been as famous as Unyielding Heart, they weren't any weaker than the guild leader. Of course, the two players had only earned their titles after reaching Tier 3 in the game. At this point, few people knew these players' true abilities. Guild leader Black Flame, you've come, Unyielding Heart said, smiling as he stood. He then gestured to Long Soul and Hunting Blade and said, let me introduce you. This is Long Soul, Unyielding Soul's chief elementalist, and this is Hunting Blade, Unyielding Soul's chief guardian knight. Hello. Both Long Soul and Hunting Blade nodded at Shifeng as they carefully observed the swordsman's every action, attempting to determine Shifeng's capabilities. Shifeng was a large part of the reason for Zero Wing's current success. The guild had even secured a foothold in the Ur Empire and forcibly dissuaded the various superpowers from targeting Zero Wing. Some time ago, Zero Wing had even sold Unyielding Soul a large number of level 55 dark gold weapons, which allowed Unyielding Soul to earn the first clear in a level 50, large-scale team dungeon and become the first guild in the Dark Knight Empire to reach 3-star status. It was because of these achievements that Unyielding Soul now had more capital to contend with Starlink in its home empire. Once everyone had been introduced, Unyielding Heart removed a list from his bag and handed it to Shifeng. A quick glance at the list left Shifeng confused. Guild leader Black Flame, I suspect that you might be interested in the items listed. Am I correct? Unyielding Heart asked, smiling. You are. Zero Wing is very interested in acquiring these items, Shifeng said, nodding. Every item on the list was a material that Zero Wing was currently trying to purchase in bulk. There were even materials for crafting the Hell Tank among them. Certain materials the Hell Tank required couldn't be acquired from team dungeons. Only a few special maps produced these materials. Unfortunately, the various large guilds valued these materials and usually didn't sell them. Hence, Melancholic Smile could only try her best to purchase these materials from other countries' independent players. Since he had no real reason to hide the fact, Shifeng acknowledged his need for these materials. Any large guild could easily deduce that Zero Wing was attempting to collect materials after all. Only these guilds did not know what Zero Wing wanted the materials for. Unyielding Soul is willing to sell these materials to Zero Wing in bulk and at market price, Unyielding Heart said. You're willing to sell Zero Wing? Shifeng smiled. That would be wonderful, but I doubt that's why you're here. If Unyielding Soul only wanted to sell Zero Wing these rare materials, Unyielding Heart wouldn't have personally visited the guild. He could have simply sent a subordinate to initiate the transaction. Moreover, Unyielding Heart had gone so far as to bring the Crimson Wizard and Iron Giant with him. Of course, that's not the only reason I've come. I would like to trade these rare materials for the Dark Corrosion set and Sundial set earlier than planned. I believe the price I have to offer will be to your satisfaction, Unyielding Heart said, nodding as he revealed his true motive. You want to conduct the transaction in advance? Glancing at Long Soul and Hunting Blade, Shifeng realized why Unyielding Heart had brought these two with him today. Unfortunately, I've already informed you and the Phoenix Pavilion Master of the auction date for the two sets. If I trade with you now, I'm afraid that it won't be fair to the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion. The Dark Corrosion set and Sundial set were both level 55 to level 60 Dark Gold set equipment. If Long Soul and Hunting Blade could use these sets now, they could be of great help to their guild. It was no wonder why Unyielding Heart wished to conduct the transaction ahead of time. I understand. That is why Unyielding Soul is willing to offer you 70,000 golds worth of rare materials or magic crystals for the two sets. I don't believe that even the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion is capable of making such an offer. If you're uncertain, we can also contact the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion and conduct an impromptu auction right now. I believe the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion won't object to the arrangement, Unyielding Heart said. When Long Soul and Hunting Blade heard Unyielding Soul's statement, their expressions changed. They both wondered if their guild leader had lost his mind. This wasn't the price they had agreed on earlier. Not only had Unyielding Heart asked to purchase the two sets for 70,000 gold, but he even offered to settle the bill with extremely rare materials. For that price, they could purchase quite a few sets of individual level 60 dark gold equipment. 70,000 gold in rare materials? Shifeng was astonished when he heard the proposal. Shifeng had to admit that the offer was tempting. He had intended to set the starting bid for the Dark Corrosion set at 24,000 gold, and that price was only so high because the set was meant for MTs. He had thought he'd be lucky to sell the Sundial set for 10,000 gold. At best, he had estimated that he could sell the two sets for a total of 50,000 gold. Yet, Unyielding Heart had just offered 70,000 gold for the sets. Moreover, he was willing to pay with the rare materials Shifeng needed to produce the Hell Tank. As Unyielding Heart had stated, Phoenix Rain couldn't match such an astronomical price. The Dark Corrosion set and Sundial sets were only level 60 Dark Gold set equipment at best, not epic equipment, which could be used until level 100 or beyond. Aqua Rose, who stood quietly to the side, flashed Unyielding a surprised expression. She hadn't expected the other guild leader to be so mad. Now that Zero Wing had garrisoned in the secret stone fortress and transferred a large number of guild members to it, the guild urgently needed a large number of coins and resources. If Zero Wing could secure the resources Unyielding Heart had just offered, this transaction could accelerate Zero Wing's occupation of the Ur Empire's southeastern region. When Unyielding Heart saw Shifeng and Aqua Rose's satisfied expressions, his smile brightened. Although he had offered to purchase the sets at a much higher price than he had initially planned, he had done so to avoid a scene. If he had competed with Phoenix Rain in an auction, the risk of leaked information would increase. Remorsefully, Shifeng shook his head. 70,000 gold is indeed tempting, but please, allow me to refuse, Shifeng said as he returned the list to Unyielding Heart, firm determination in his eyes. Are you not satisfied with my offer? Unyielding Heart was stunned. Long Soul and Hunting Blade stared at Shifeng as well. They both thought that Shifeng had lost his mind. No one else would offer such a generous price, yet Shifeng had rejected it. No, I find it quite satisfying, Shifeng answered truthfully. Then why? Unyielding Heart's confidence began to crumble as he stared at Shifeng. Unfortunately, I'm more interested in the Sea of Trees, Shifeng said, chuckling. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.